Okay, thank you very much for attending this afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And before I do, we are acknowledging that we're in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Huron-Robinson Treaties area. We recognize the long history of First Nations and Métis people on this land, and we show respect to them today. We acknowledge our neighbors, the Wattamohawks and the First Nations of Moose Deer, Shawniga, Wasauksing, Magnetawan, Henley Inlet, Nipissing, and the Dokies. As we're learning from our First Nation partners of the Wasauksing First Nation, we need to stress the importance of accepting our responsibility to take care of Mother Earth, her plants, her animals, and our shared peoples. We will look to each other and the elders of both nations as a source of inspiration, guidance, and the living memory of our communities. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all of the generations of all peoples who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. And I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for an approval of the agenda. The agenda is supplemented by the addendum, which you received this afternoon. Correspondence has been added through the addendum to items 5A and B, 7A and B. And on the closed session, there's an addition of 2 items, the addition of a potential property acquisition and an addition of an item on short-term rentals. With those changes, may I have an approval of the agenda? Okay, thank you. And is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Nope, we move on. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular and closed session meetings of council held July 2nd as circulated. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Ted. All in favor? Sorry. That's right. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn the regular meeting to hold a public meeting for the following matters. Consent application number B 2024-0008-H and B 2024-0009-H and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0013-H for Pitaway, and zoning bylaw amendment application number 2024-0012-H for Lucock. Can I have a motion to move into public? Craig and Ken. All in favor? Thank you. Council will now hold public meetings as proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications. In accordance with the Planning Act, Council will consider all matters placed before it prior to granting a consent or passing a zoning bylaw. Anyone wishing to receive notice of the passing of a zoning bylaw amendment and who has not submitted such a request in writing should provide their full name and address to the clerk. No one other than the specified persons may appeal an application under the provisions of the Planning Act. If they do not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin prior to the decision of Council, then the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. The purpose of consent application number B 2024-0008-H and B 2024-0009-H for Pitaway is to permit 2 boundary adjustments along the shared lot line of the subject lands. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0013-H for Pitaway is to rezone the subject lands to permit the construction of a 2-story cottage and a 1-story 2-slip boathouse. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which the notice of the meeting was provided and on the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property on June 13th, 2024, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on June 14th, 2024. Notice was therefore considered right in accordance with requirements of the Planning Act.
Has Township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
Correspondence has been received from numerous individuals and has been included in the agenda and the addendum packages.
Is there anyone present in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? No one in council to speak to the Pitaway application?
So, find out here is presentation, so maybe we'll do that first before the rest of the.
Oh.
Ryan Allen.
Okay, so
So
Ryan Allen, okay. Ryan, can you, as you approach the microphone, could you push the little button to make the light go on and identify yourself and your address?
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, excuse me. My name is Ryan Allen. I'm a registered professional planner with Planscape, 104 Kimberley Ave, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L1Z8. I'm here today representing Mitch Pitaway and Hannah Sundari related to their proposed severance and zoning bylaw amendment on Lake Joseph on Veronica Jean Lane, number 25 and 31. I do have a presentation that I'd like to share. It's somewhat extensive, but I promise that we'll move expeditiously through it. There is a number of components to the application, which I think adds some complexity, but it's not overall a complicated proposal that will be in front of you. Next slide, please. Actually, thank you, Mr. Clerk. I have the, I did turn it on. Here we go. The subject property is at 25 and 31 Veronica Jean Lane on Lake Joseph, Stanley Bay, and on the north side of Trout Bay, as you can see identified there in yellow. This is the site plan that shows the two lots, number 25 on the north and 31 to the south. There's a dwelling under construction on 25 that fully complies with the bylaw. And there's an existing small cottage towards the point on lot 31 that's proposed to be replaced with a new cottage. And you'll see that this is a complicated property. It's a point of land, so it has the 20-meter setback that comes from all sides, the point, the east, and the west. And as a result, the building envelope is somewhat challenging to fit a building of regular dimensions, a rectangular box within. So the architects have spent a lot of time developing a building that tries to fit in to the building envelope, the 20-meter setback as much as possible. And the lot additions that are proposed are intended to provide better locations for the septic system and to adjust the side lot line projection for a new boathouse. I would note that there is a driveway that has been constructed. That driveway was constructed prior to the passage of the site alteration bylaw in March. That work was all completed by the previous property owner as well. There has been some tree clearing as well previously within the 20-meter setback. All of that tree clearing area is the location of the proposed cottage. We have engaged an environmental consultant to review the site, as also to review the development recommendations that came out of the severance in 2010, which created this lot. So the applications in front of you today, the development is the construction of a new cottage and a new boathouse and dock. The severances adjust the lot lines, one to provide a lot addition to lot 31 to provide a bigger area for a septic system and to adjust the lot line projection. And the zoning bylaw amendment has four components. It has a retaining wall height, shoreline setback, deck and eaves projection, and lot coverage. And I'll kind of walk through the severance plan first. The first lot addition proposes to add about 0.2 of an acre from lot 25 to 31. And that is for the improved location for a septic system. It's more level and it's further back from the shoreline. There's no change to the frontage. It's only a change in lot area. Both lots will maintain their existing frontage. Lot 31 is 90 meters and over 140 meters on lot 25. Here's a closer view of the lot addition and the relocation of the septic system to a more preferred location. Existing dwelling number 1, no changes are impactful to that lot as a result of this lot addition. No impacts to access, servicing, setbacks, the building that's under construction. A very small addition for the second severance. And you'll be familiar that there are no lot lines in water. Where the lot line touches the high water mark, the lot line is extended straight out. And if you work from the east side of this lot, we have EP2 zoning, which is significant fish habitat at the top. The 2010 environmental review identified additional significant fish habitat that wraps around the eastern point. There's a small island which has very shallow water depths and poses great technical challenges for locating a boathouse in that location. If you come around a point, the small little embayment, the projection of the existing side lot line nixes the ability for this boathouse to meet setbacks. So we're proposing to transfer a very, very small area right at the water's edge. It's a little triangular shape to kick that lot line projection on a different angle. So the new dock and boathouse location could comply with that requirement. So really it's a technical severance in some ways to just make the projection proceed at a different angle. I would also say that the boathouse and dock location is the least visually impactful location. It's not on the point, and it's also not on the Trout Bay side of the island, which there are approximately 23 properties who have views outside of that bay. So putting it around the point, and also Mitch and Hannah own the property to the north, and they're the most impacted by their own boathouse, which I think should be the way that it proceeds. The zoning bylaw amendment application has 4 components. The first is a retaining wall. The retaining wall is permitted to be 4.5 meters tall, provided it is at the 20-meter setback. It is at an 18.7 meter setback, and therefore can only be 1 meter tall. So we're in between this this gray zone where we need 2.4 meters of retaining wall height at the 18.7 meter setback. If we were at the 20 meters, we could be the full 4.5. The intention of the retaining wall is to support the stairs that come from the back driveway into the building. Next slide, please. The second amendment is related to the setback of the building. The minimum setback is 20 meters. The existing building is setback 13.5 meters. The new building area is substantially located within the 20-meter setback, 99.3% to be exact. So only 0.7% is within the setback. The setback on the eastern side is a reduction of 60 centimeters, and the reduction on the northern side is a reduction of less than 200 centimeters. So the amount that we're talking about reducing the setbacks are very small. And you'll also see by looking at the site plan from other points of the shoreline, the setbacks are much greater, well in excess of the 20 meters. The amount of development that is located within the setback is also very limited. The existing building is almost 60 square meters. The bylaw would allow almost up to 160 square meters of development within this area, within the 20-meter setback, that is. The dwelling that's proposed has an area of only 6.2 meters within the setback. So there's a substantial reduction of development area within the setback, and the area will be revegetated, any buildings that are to be removed. Part 3 of the zoning bylaw amendment is related to overhangs and decks. Overhangs are only permitted to extend 0.75 meters from the edge of the building, and decks, depending on the height and depending on the setback, can only extend 1.8 meters to 3 meters. This is a very interesting building. It has a lot of architecture to it, and the overhangs are a big part of that architecture. You'll see there's 2 levels of deck. There's a rear deck, which is dark pink, and then there's a lower deck towards the front. And that's because the building steps down in height. And as a result, the decks that serve those floors also step down in height. I'd also note too that while we call them decks, on the eastern side of the building, the decks are only 1.5 meters wide, which serve more of a walkway than they do an actual deck itself. The architects are here today to provide a few commentary about why the overhangs are important to the efficiency and the design of the building. More than 80% of the decks are beyond the 20-meter setback and fully comply. So it's just the portion of the decks that are within the setbacks that comply, and the distance from the exterior of the building wall. I would note that no tree removal is required for any of the proposed development, any of the proposed decks, setbacks, or overhangs. The last, here's an elevation of the building. I would note that it's very impressive that they managed to fit a compliant height at 7.5 meters with a building that steps from an elevation greater at the rear and lower at the front. And you can see the 2 decks there shown in highlighted pink. The last component of the zoning bylaw amendment is related to coverage. And I think it's important that we just talked about decks and overhangs, because decks and overhangs, depending on their size, count towards coverage. So while there is an increase in coverage that's proposed, the amount of decks and overhangs on the dwelling are substantial. 50% of the dwelling area is decks and overhangs. The added coverage that's being requested is not for interior space, more living area. This is exterior space, walkways, and the decks are below the overhangs. So there is a relationship between the two. In total, the building area is 50% of the coverage. And again, the decks and the overhangs and a small bridge to the rear are a smaller amount. I would note that we have heard comments from the public and are prepared to respond to that. There's a reduction of the boathouse overhang, 40.2 square meters reduced, which brings our proposed lot coverage within 60 meters to 9% instead of 9.3, and reduces the lot coverage over the entire lot to 7.8, where the maximum is 7. So we're getting closer to the right number. I have a few photos. This is the existing dwelling that's proposed to be removed. We did not think that it was appropriate to expand this existing dwelling in the existing location. This is where the most dense vegetation and trees on the property are located. We're moving away from that area. That dwelling will be removed and the footprint revegetated. This is the location on the western shoreline. This is the bridge that connects back to a parking area and lot number 25 to be reconfigured. These are views yesterday from the lake of the property. This is looking towards the western portion of the shoreline on Trout Bay that has the significant fish habitat, and we're looking towards the area where the dwelling would be located. Moving around the point, this is the small island. It's a bit of a bald rock, and we're looking towards the existing dwelling, which is not visible through the trees. The proposed boathouse location is within the small embayment that is tucked around the corner, and you can see lot number 25 and lot number 31, very well forested. There is a lot of elevation and terrain on lot number 25. I am almost done, I promise. I have another slide that shows the existing dwelling that's under construction up on lot number 21. It's very well screened and buffered by the existing vegetation. And lot number 25 also has an extensive amount of shoreline, and this is looking down the second image on the right, down the shoreline towards the neighboring property owners. This is the proposed septic system location, which is nice and level. Doesn't require any blasting. The alternative location requires blasting for a septic system and is much closer to the shoreline than this location. I think that you've heard from me, there's a number of positive things that are happening with this application. Buildings are moving back. The amount of development is getting smaller. We're finding a location on the site that is least impactful for the dock and the boathouse. So the overall amount of coverage, well, there is an ask on the table. We're not adding additional floor area. The dwelling complies with the maximum size of a dwelling. We're talking about decks and covered area, and we're willing to make a reduction. In fact, we're willing to specifically prohibit that boathouse is a 1.5-story boathouse. We've proposed it as a 1-story boathouse, and we're willing to include in the bylaw such a restriction for that to happen. The architects and the landscape renaturalization architect is here as well. They do have some brief comments to provide. If the council would like to hear from them, I can advance the screen while they speak over top of me.
Okay, please proceed.
Are
they?
Donald, would you be able to join?
Yes, right here. Thank you, Ryan. Hello.
If you take your screen share off, there we go. Okay.
Hello.
Okay, can you identify your name and the name of your corporation and an address, please?
Hello.
Donald, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you provide your name and mailing address, please?
Hello, my name is Donald Peckover from AKB Architects, mailing address 182D St. Helens Avenue, Toronto, Ontario, M6H4A1.
Okay, take it away, Donald.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. Good afternoon, committee. AKB's architectural strategies are designed to create a harmonious relationship between nature and the built environment. We utilize local, contextually appropriate building materials to blend seamlessly with the native surroundings. This includes Muskoka granite cladding and weathered cedar walls to complement the property's natural palette. Next slide, Ryan. Our built structures integrate beautifully with natural topography and forested areas. They embody passive house principles, incorporating super insulation, airtight construction, and high-quality windows with optimal solar orientation, all of which minimize energy consumption and carbon emissions. At this project in particular, we are also integrating a geo-exchange system underneath the cottage footprint, using the earth for natural heating and cooling. Coupled with these passive design principles, this significantly reduces energy use and operational carbon costs, ensuring our projects are visually harmonious with our environments and operationally sustainable. Next slide, please. Regarding the requested front yard setbacks, as Ryan described, the cottage is carefully designed to fit on a constrained permitted footprint on the lower portion of the property. The proposed areas projecting over the setback line are less extensive than the current existing cottage, and they are positioned further inland from the shoreline. As a result, this proposal represents a significant improvement over the current condition. Regarding the requested lot coverage, we have considered feedback from the lake neighbors, as described by Ryan, reducing lot coverage down to 9% within 60 meters of the shoreline to better align with the bylaw and official plan. The most notable reduction is at the boathouse, minimizing the visual and environmental impact on the lake and shoreline, endeavoring to be of minimal impact on the landscape. Next slide, please. Regarding the requested deck projections, the perimeter walkway around the cottage has been designed to enhance accessibility, maintenance, and connectivity around the cottage, while also addressing significant grade changes and striving to be invisible from the lake. They are convenient and scenic walkways rather than seating areas, and designed to facilitate easy movement between different areas of the cottage above grade. Regarding the eave projections as well, they have been designed to overhang beyond the walking surfaces, keeping residents comfortable and dry. The extended roof drip edge directs rainwater naturally to the ground, eliminating the need for eaves troughs and downspouts that collect and direct large quantities of water and can contribute to erosion. Gravel beds and natural catchment areas at grade promote water percolation into the soil. By extending the eave drip line beyond the deck's edge, we protect finished surfaces, enhancing durability of our structures. Additionally, the roof overhangs provide welcome shade in the summer. On the west side especially, seen here, they shield spaces from intense summer, afternoon, evening sun, ensuring a pleasant indoor environment and reducing cooling loads. In winter, they capture lower angle sun for passive solar heating and natural daylighting, improving comfort and mood while reducing energy costs. Regarding the requested retaining wall heights, these follow the exterior perimeter walkways around the cottage, accommodating those significant grade changes and ensuring access and safety per the Ontario Building Code. Clad in locally sourced Muskoka granite, the natural, random-sized pieces complement the landscape and aim to be as unobtrusive as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Madam Mayor, we also have Virginia Burt. She is a landscape architect and would like to provide some brief comments as well.
That's fine. She needs to help us with her address and company name.
Virginia, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Could you
Hello, good
provide your
afternoon.
mailing address and
Yes, I
name,
will.
please?
My name is Virginia Burt. I am the principal and head designer of Virginia Burt Designs, 55 Head Street, Suite 203, Dundas, Ontario, L9H3H8. Good afternoon. Thank you for your attention. You know, this iconic landscape is one portrayed by many artists, most famously, of course, the Group of Seven and Tom Thompson. And here, Lauren Harris, painting Shimmering Water, exemplifies the unique character of a Muskoka waterfront, seen here on the right. Whoa, sorry, could you go back just one for a split second? I gotta say another paragraph there. Yep, thank you. Thank you. At 25, Veronica Jean. I'll be taking you through various Virginia Burt Designs projects. We have been working in the area now for approximately 20 years. So we have, and I grew up on Lake Bay, so I'm well aware of this delicate and beautiful landscape. And portrayed here, of course, is the ribbon of life, where the shallows of the littoral zone occur, the shoreline where water meets the land, riparian zone where riparian transitions up to upland. The goal here is to maintain existing trees, native ferns and grasses, mosses and lichen, from the biggest to the smallest. And then, where needed and necessary, adding native plants appropriate to each zone. What is also portrayed is the landscape where the natural environment dominates human-built structures. We, our client, Mitch, Hannah, and their young children, and ourselves, the design team, and Tamarack North as contractors, are committed to maintaining that existing littoral, shoreline, riparian, and upland zone in their natural vegetative state, and where needed, supplement to restore, rewild, and care for. We know that the trees along the shore have a natural deer browsing line, and these trees were not altered by this owner's hand. Some have cedars extending fully down to the water, where deer would delight in having some evergreen snacks. However, thankfully, the adjacent rock face of the riparian zone is too steep for the deer to access. So protection is our best option in relation to considering any project. Our strategies include inventory and preservation of existing trees and vegetation, siting a cottage in relation to topography, views, and mature trees, attending to erosion and sedimentation, employing permeable terraces, areas with conscious assessment from a boater's view, as well as the edges of the shoreline. We used varied manners of tree protection, one that you can see here in the middle, from deep layering of mulch to protect the roots and shorelines, to wrapping the trunks with filter fabric and 2x4s. And again, this particular tree that you can see had an existing foundation that was right adjacent to it, so we were not injuring its roots or impacting its root zone, often protected diligently by our team, I might add. What I will also say is that we have rainwater here that is falling directly from both of these roofs. You can see a pebble strip. Both of those are falling into what is considered a French drain, a pebble strip that has a pipe in it that takes it to the various stormwater management techniques. Last but not least, we protect the bedrock. And you can see in the lower picture on the right and the upper picture on the right, we protect that bedrock by using rubber mats to prevent and ensure that equipment scratches and marking does not happen, hay bales and silt fences to prevent erosion. All of these align with sequence and timing of construction. Proposed construction techniques might include helical piles. They may include to bridge root zones, pinning to bedrock to decrease footing sizes, to using steel pilings for permanent docks for the lowest impact. At the boathouse, construction is proposed from a barge to decrease these impacts, including shore anchoring that is carefully implemented to protect tree trunks and shoreline bedrock. Our goal is to preserve and conserve the natural and heritage found on this property. Native understory plants, which you see in the lower right, wintergreen, blueberry, clintonia, sensitive and bracken ferns, Pennsylvania sedge, and wavy hairgrass all play a role. Here they are on site and are caretakers of our ecological health. The baby oak seedling, part of a dynamic system, helping to create habitat, food sources for wildlife, all while serving to establish a healthy ecosystem. Our planting days, when we do the projects like this, you can see in the upper left, those planting days are filled with a variety of sizes from large to small. And then if you look in the bottom left, you'll see both the native edge planted shoreline and to the left of that, the second red maple, the planted shoreline by us. Our goal is to make it look seamless. If I could go to these activities all support and meet design guidelines for the waterfront, ultimately attending to natural processes named above and preserving the cultural landscape. And here you can see the main cottage was sited to preserve the view from the water, that the native, and you can see from the back on the upper right, you can see the back side of the cottage, native upland grasses. We planted over 3/4 of those because we were emulating exactly what Mother Nature had, as well as protecting those that bedrock. I'll also mention, you can see the size of the development, and yet from the water looks filtered and meets the guidelines for waterfront development. If you could go to the next one, please. Last but not least, of course, folks, just bear with me. Just quickly, what's beautiful about this aerial shot is you can see the littoral zone, the shoreline, the riparian, and the upland, all in context, in actual, both from the water and also from directly above. So you can see that the cottage is tucked in and stepped back following those awkward point-like setbacks. In conclusion, and the reason why I'm here today as a landscape architect is to steward this landscape from preservation to construction techniques to the last plant being placed and taken care of so that it embodies our commitment to natural heritage in the township of Seguin. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. If I could make it is the end of the presentation. I have one concluding remark. Thank you, Council, for indulging us. We had a lot to say. This project, as you can tell, took a long time to develop. We were very thoughtful. We hope that you could advance this project. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and we look forward to some feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Does council have any questions of the three people who have presented so far? Okay. I remind everyone that we are only here to hear presentations. There are no decisions to be made today in any part of the public meeting. So, questions? Councillor Finson?
I just wonder, like, why so many of the things are over. I mean, your architects, your designers, you've got a piece of property that's this big. Your limits are there. I just wonder why so many of the items are going over what you're allowed.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. It's a good question. I think it applies to every planning application. You know, why are you here? Why can't you comply? The zoning bylaws are one size fits all. Every property is different. Setbacks are different. Property that has a straight shoreline versus a point of land is going to be impacted differently by different portions of the bylaw. The official plan outlines the goals, objectives, and the vision for the municipality in the waterfront area. So where the bylaw doesn't fit one size fits all, or maybe there's an interesting or unique feature that's to be added to the building, we come back to the official plan. And what do the policies say? Because the policies are guiding zoning. And if we can address the policy objective of the official plan, then we've achieved the goals and objectives that the community set out. So just because there's an amendment to the bylaw doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Where what we do is refer back to the official plan. So for example, the official plan speaks to lot coverage limits of 10%, speaks to shoreline buffers of 20 meters, speaks to preserving the shoreline vegetation. All of those things have been addressed as part of this application. There are some increased overhangs and decks. And I think that's why we're here to see if you would consider a site-specific approval for this specific application based on the unique design, the unique property, the unique setbacks.
And there's two properties. The other property has its own individual septic aside from this one. And this is going to be a new septic that you're putting in for just that property?
Correct. They're both two separately independently serviced properties.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone in council chambers who wishes to speak to this application with new information? You are allowed to make a presentation on this, but unfortunately, no, there are really no questions from the public. Do you want to present? Okay, please approach the podium and identify yourself, your address, and make sure the little green light's on.
Dave Batchelor, 29A Steeles Road. So I'd be a fairly close neighbor on Trout Bay. So we've heard a lot about how beautiful this cottage will be and all the interesting features and it'll have, how environmentally responsible it'll be. But a statement was made that they have reduced the footprint, yet it is still 32% over the allowed lot coverage, a bylaw put in place to protect our lake in Seguin. I don't understand why the design or features of the cottage have anything to do with not following the development rules. The architectural commentary sounds like a sell sheet for a realtor as opposed to one that respects the natural beauty of Lake Joseph waterfront in Seguin Township. I'm not sure why Tom Thompson has anything to do with this piece of land, as it currently bears no resemblance after the previous owner blasted Muskoka granite and cleared tree canopy and undergrowth for over 3 years. The rules were put in place to protect what residents come to Seguin for. The beauty of the shoreline, the water quality, this is why we're here. rules were put in place prior to the purchase, so there's no surprise to the owners that new variants, that these rules were not in place. I currently own a property. It was purchased, rules were put in place afterwards. We had to abide by the rules and we're allowed no variances when we built. Seguin has developed some of the most stringent development rules in Muskoka, and this is recognized when one drives their boat north from the bottom of the lake to the north. Larger lots, less tree cutting, less shoreline coverage, which makes for a more beautiful shoreline. It's so apparent. You do that one little trip and you can see the difference. And that's why people respect the rules that are put in place by the council. This cottage has very little vegetation to conceal it from the water view. The previous owners stripped the property, so it's little wonder they did not have to remove more. A 32% increase in lot coverage is extreme, in my opinion. Personally, having gone through the building process, not allowed any variances to accommodate our requirements, when I saw the application and I saw at least 5 variances that I can see that all act to encroach on the water and the shoreline, doesn't really sit well. Furthermore, I find the pictures misleading in the presentation of the shoreline. Those pictures, I'm not sure how they were taken or angle or anything, but when you look at that shoreline, it bears no resemblance. You can look straight through from one side to the other, so any cottage that's put on there will be in clear view of everything. There's nothing hiding it. So, and I also believe that was said at the beginning of this meeting, that we're here to protect Mother Earth, as others have done thousands of years before. And that rang out true when I heard that. I thought those are amazing words. I believe that is why Seguin originally put the rules in place. There are numerous variances that have been requested that all break the rules in place. And I think the rules are there to protect everybody and not just somebody that wants to build a cottage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have questions for gentlemen? Anyone else in the audience that wants to present? Nope. Has anyone registered? Has anyone registered to speak to this application via electronic participation? And I see Nancy Cohen, who's the president of the Lake Joe North Association. So is Nancy able to speak? Should be able to, Nancy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you for hearing us. Hello, my name is Nancy Cohen. I'm president of Lake Joe North Association. Having listened to the other 4 presenters, I appreciate everything you've said. I do have a presentation. I will try to abbreviate. Where I'm being repetitive, I'm just going to switch to that now. So can you see it?
Not yet. Your screen share?
Screen share. That better?
Okay, now we can. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So Lake Joseph North has on Seguin portion of Lake Joe, we've been established since 1996, and we're focused on all of this list of things: water quality, natural environment, and monitoring and responding to zoning applications, a key priority of our association. We have a process reviewing by the board before I present here today. We have submitted a letter, but I'm glad I'm here today to present as well. Preserving the view from the canoe and water quality are our priorities. And these are really proxies for or ways of capturing an awful lot of thinking on preserving the natural beauty of our lake for future generations and preserving the integrity of the natural environment. Each of our actions add up. I really want to say that I appreciate all the thoughtful and the careful explanation of the plans that have been put forward by the 3 professionals we just heard from. It looks like a lot of thought has been put into the planning and the building. However, the lot as you heard from David Batchelor, has suffered a lot of indignities in the last while. It is a very prominent lot and it needs very careful planning and on it. I just have this slide of all the reductions, exemptions that have been requested. Our objection is mostly focused on the excess coverage. It occupies almost all of the lower portion of the land. And this is a highly visible point. You can see it from far out in Stanley Bay and from really three sides. It's out of character with the other properties on the bay and is not, in our view, not conforming to the policy in the official plan about low density and low impact on the land. Our members, we hear this very often from members. They're concerns about overbuilding and that the bylaws be applied fairly and consistently to all. There were quite a few letters that were written about this zoning bylaw application, and I've picked a couple of quotes. The full letters are included in your packages, and I encourage you to read them and consider all of this thinking that people have put in. There's a focus on the environmental issues, as you heard. There is a type 1 and type 2 fishing habitat around the whole point pretty much. And while I'm very happy to hear that they're taking precautions, this is really important. People fish there summer and winter. Lake Joe North is a trout lake, as most people here know. This last quote, many people feel that we've all had to respect the size and coverage limitations, and these have led to the protection of the natural beauty of our lake. We object to the application in its current form. However, I understand that it's already been some new proposals have come forward. Thank you for that, for considering that. We strongly recommend that you reduce coverage even further. We'd like to see the detailed site plan. We appreciate the tree inventory and all that. And this site plan should protect the visual qualities of the point, providing more tree cover. Guarantee there be no additional accessory buildings or sleeping cabins on the boathouse. So we appreciate your today's commitment to do so. We'd like to see that confirmed in a proper agreement. And I mentioned the habitat. There's things you can do. I think you committed today to doing those things during construction to protect the fish habitat. We'd like to see that in the site plan agreement so that it's there for everybody to follow, and appropriate security for the work. We appreciate very much the opportunity to speak for our members' concerns, and we look forward to working together to safeguard our beautiful lake. That's all for me.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
Thank
Does
you.
council have any question of Nancy? Nope. Okay, so we move on. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment R 2024-0012-H for Lucock is to provide an exemption to total lot coverage, maximum gross floor area, boathouse length, and boathouse total deck area to expand an existing cottage and boathouse. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property on June 13th, 2024, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on June 14th, 2024. Notice was therefore considered provided in accordance with requirements of the Planning Act.
Has Township received any correspondence with respect to these applications?
Correspondence has been received from numerous individuals and has been included in the agenda and the addendum packages.
Thank you very much. And I do remind everybody that there are no decisions to be made today on this item. Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to these applications? Okay, could you please come to the podium and identify yourself and your address and make sure the little green light is on?
Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Robinson, 132 Cranberry Cove Road, just in the outskirts of Hammer Bay. I've been a cottager on Lake Joe all of my life, dating back to 1957. And I purchased the family cottage in 1995, expanded it and kept it within the bylaws, and which still conform to the bylaws today. I also lowered it with no basement whatsoever and kept the second floor roof lines very, very low to minimize impact. In all, it's about 3,000 square feet. It has 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 3 living rooms, and tons of space for accommodating at least 12 people. The proposal that's in front of us for this Leacock property would end up being 2.5 times that size, plus a coach house or second, third, 3-car garage in the back 40 beyond the 60 meters, plus the 3-car garage attached to the house. The whole thing being 40 feet high, facing the water, I believe is way over the top. I've been doing design build contractor in Toronto and in cottage properties for 45 years. Let's talk about the reason for the bylaws. Lake Joe North and all of Seguin is a desirable place to live for all the values we've been hearing about today, especially what Ann started with, values going back hundreds of years. We want to protect this. This is why we all worked so hard in the early 2000s to update the official plan, a long democratic process, which arrived at our bylaws, which we cherish and protect the shorelines. Let's talk about the numbers of this proposal. The lot coverage is almost 50% over the allowable. Gross floor area is approximately 40% over, 2,150 square feet over the allowed to end up with a total of 7,500 square feet, plus the 3-car garage and the coach house in the back. Plus lots of decks and covered decks and so on and so forth. The boathouse, they look to increase it to 12 meters from 11 meters deep. This to allow a 32-foot slip. Boathouse is already over coverage. The deck area, they want to go to 237 feet where 168 square meters, sorry, excuse me, 237 square meters where only 168 square meters are permitted. Putting that in colloquial terms, that's 2,550 square feet of deck and dock. And most egregiously, the dock isn't even along the shoreline, it's pushed out partially in front of the boathouse. Lastly, height and impact. As mentioned earlier, it's a 3-story high with a walkout basement, 40 feet high, stretching most of the length of the property. This will have a big impact on the landscape. But mostly what I want to talk about in all of this is if this is allowed to happen, everybody else is going to want to add tons more square footage and it'll make a total mockery of our bylaws. We cannot do this. Let's not destroy the view from the canoe. Please turn this proposal down or at least have it amended dramatically. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the, I think Cecil, come on up.
I do not have any Tom Thompson paintings to show you today.
Just make sure the
but
green
I do
light's
have
on.
some comments I'd like to make.
Is the green light on?
It is on.
And we
Just give
need
me-
your name and address.
Yes, I'm just gonna try and turn this on. Give me 1 second. My name is Cecil Hayho. And I am at 147 Appledale Road. And my mailing address is 33 Balmoral Avenue, Toronto, Ontario, M4V 1J5. My wife and I own the cottage property a short distance directly across Hamer Bay from the Lucock property. Now, before I make any further remarks, when 3 of my neighbors and I voted over to introduce ourselves to the applicant, Aaron Lucock, we were graciously received by himself and his wife, and we had a very friendly discussion, listening to his objectives he had to redevelop this property on Hamer Bay. And they listened patiently to some of the concerns we had, as the exceptions were very large relative to bylaw 06125. We do not want to seem unwelcoming to a new family coming to enjoy Hamer Bay. But we understand that if we have concerns about this zoning amendment, we need to have them on the table today, this afternoon. Just, I think, 3 points that are relevant to this discussion. Number 1, the current bylaws were supported by and reflected, to some extent, the residents at the time of Lake Joseph North, and including Hamer Bay. In the late 1990s, my cottage neighbor, Sean Gordon, who's here tonight, and I and others formed the Lake Joseph North Association. And by the early 2000s, we had over 250 families that were members, representing a significant majority of the shoreline of Lake Joseph North. Our members emphasized their passion to maintain the beauty of our lake, the pristine quality of our water, while allowing reasonable development to occur on the shores of our lake. At this time, the township was initiating a process that some of you were involved with and recall, to establish new official plan and new zoning bylaws. To get feedback from our members, we had professional planners, professional architects, members of the township, and others present at our annual meetings when we have over 200 registered members in attendance, several years in a row. And we were engaging the community in feedback, and alternatives from the planners were being presented. We also sent out newsletters to all the residents of Lake Joseph North. We sent out surveys. Sean tabulated them all to all residents. We had a very high response rate, and they weighed in on the alternatives that they thought were appropriate for building on the shorelines, at least of our lake.
Cecil, can you just step closer to the microphone? Because some of the people online can't hear you if you move back. So sorry to interrupt.
We encouraged our members to participate in the very democratic and comprehensive process, where they had many the township held many town hall meetings. Some of you participated in that, and mailed out surveys. And we encouraged the members to write to the township so that their voices could be heard in this very rigorous democratic process in forming the new official plan and bylaws. Point 2, David Kahn, our 3-time mayor, was elected to develop and maintain the Environment First mandate of the township at that time. In late 2003, he was elected, and one of his key platforms, it was mentioned tonight, in developing our shorelines, be sensitive to the view from the canoe. He led, shortly thereafter, when he was elected, he led a 3-year, very professional, comprehensive democratic process involving all the stakeholders in Seguin, including over 10 lake associations. And if I look around the room, I see Karen Buck and Mario. They were part of that process. And using this input, after a 3-year process, they developed a new official plan and the comprehensive zoning bylaws that went with the new official plan. This bylaw, which I'm going to refer to as 06-125, which is where the exceptions are being referred to, became law of the township in late 2006 and was approved by the province of Ontario shortly thereafter. Our current mayor, two-term mayor, I might say, her number one point on her election brochure, when she ran to be elected the first time, protect our environment. And if you go in a couple of pages, her number one bullet point is enforce the official plan. And that's what I heard the gentleman earlier here say. If we really believe we want larger cottages on our shorelines, then the township needs to initiate and lead professional comprehensive process like we did many years ago and come up with a new set of guidelines. Until then, council should not approve large exceptions on a one-off basis to individuals, which you know are going to be used to initiate greater exceptions for more people and ultimately diminish the beauty of our lake. I urge the council to turn this bylaw amendment proposal down and perhaps ask them to come back with a development proposal in keeping with the current official plan and bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Cecil. Does anybody else want to speak? We can't. Once
Green light.
again, your name and
My name is Blair St. Clair. The light's on. I'm at 39 Appledale Road, and our cottage is right across the bay from the property we're talking about. We bought in 1989, and in 2021, we got a permit and built a new cottage that was able to accommodate. We have 3 adult sons, their wives, 4 grandchildren. Our lot is 174 feet of frontage. We were able to build a cottage to fit everybody in within the bylaws as they are right now. And that's the reason for our objection, is it is possible to build a really wonderful cottage staying within the existing bylaws. Our concern with this application is that there's an inequity there. Those of us who have stayed within the bylaws have been able to do that. This is pushing outside of the bylaws, and the bylaws that we believe are there for a very, very good reason. We'd like you to turn it down. That's our reason for opposition. I'd also like to say again, as was mentioned before, we feel if this starts, there's a precedent then of even larger requests coming later that will really damage the look of our lakes. Thank you.
thank you very much. Anybody else that's in council chambers that wishes to speak? No. Has anyone registered to speak via electronic presentation? So Savas of Plan Muskoka, and then we'll recognize Nancy. So go ahead, Savas. You know the drill, your address and your.
Hi, my name is Savas Feratis of Plan Muskoka Inc. My address is PO Box 5384, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 2K7. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Perfect. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to just share my screen for, if that's okay with you. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So I did write a fairly extensive plan justification report, which I believe was shared as part of the agenda package here today. I'm not going to go through all the details of it. It's there for members of council to read, but I will share some of the sort of key facts about this application that I feel like are necessary to be heard here today. So as you know, the zoning amendment application in front of council here today is for information purposes only. The purpose of the application is to seek variances to the bylaw to allow for the construction of a proposed addition to the existing dwelling, an addition to the existing boathouse, and an addition to the existing dock. Here you see an excerpt from the site plan that was prepared by the designers of the project. The existing dwelling is located in this area, sort of overlaps the proposed addition slightly. There's an addition proposed then to the rear of the structure and to the side. And in terms of the boathouse, there's a small addition proposed to the front of the boathouse, like a small strip of about 1 meter wide. And there's a swim dock addition proposed on the side of the dock as well. So the purpose of the dwelling addition is, in speaking with the Lucocks, they are a family of 5. They have 3 children under the age of 6. They are all currently trying to use this cottage as best as they can, the existing cottage. And what I'm told is the existing cottage has 2 bedrooms in the upper level, 1 bedroom on the main level, and 1 bedroom in the basement, which effectively spreads the whole family across 3 floors when they're using it. The purpose of this addition is to provide for more main level and upper level living, which would then consolidate the family from being able to have to use multiple levels when sleeping at night. When they started this project, the Lucocks worked with the designers, and their mandate was to try to utilize the existing topography of the property as much as possible and try to cut down as little of the trees as they could to accommodate the proposed addition. They also did their research and saw what other people were proposing around the municipality, what types of applications were considered and approved by council. And what they did find is that on different occasions, multiple different occasions, council has heard and processed applications for seeking lot coverage increases of up to 10%. They then worked with their designers to position the dwelling addition on the back of the proposed, the existing dwelling, which is located here in this area, with only a portion of it proposed to be located on the side facing the water. And this is a screen porch addition, which utilizes some of a covered deck that already exists along the side of the building. This addition in its entirety meets all required setbacks from the zone in terms of side yard setbacks and front yard setbacks as well. Just to show council what it looks like behind the dwelling. So as you can see, this is the back wall from the dwelling that I referred to. And you can see that there's a large gravel sort of turning area and parking area that is to be utilized for the addition. When I turned around and looked back towards the water from the position I was standing at, that's what the second photo here in the bottom right-hand corner is for. And you can see that there already is an existing buffer of mature vegetation that can be maintained to help hide that dwelling addition from view from the lake. So just to look at it from a different perspective, the orange you see here on this sketch is the existing structures, and the beige is the proposed structure. So you can see again, when viewed from the water, the majority of the proposed addition is located to the rear of the structure, quite far from the shoreline. In terms of the boathouse addition, which is located here in the front portion, the purpose of that is to accommodate new garage doors for the front of the boathouse, and in doing so without altering or having to remove the existing boat lifts within the boathouse. So what this does is, when we look at it from an analytical perspective, what we're looking for to make sure is that this bump out in the front does not exceed the maximum projection permission of a boathouse, which it does not. It still maintains the 15-meter maximum, and it contributes slightly as well to the lot coverage proposal that's in front of the council here today. Care was also provided with the designers to ensure that the resulting architecture of the front of the building would be in character with the area. In terms of the dock addition, which you see here on the side of the proposal, the side of the sketch here, sorry. The family is asking basically for additional dock space to accommodate a new swim dock for young children. The existing dock currently in its form is only this narrow portion that extends down the side of the existing boathouse. And what it results is that it's not safe or practical for young children to enter and exit the lake and learn to swim from that location. So the purpose of this new dock addition is just simply to accommodate a swimming area for the proposed for the existing family. So the amendment you have in front of you here today is there's a maximum lot coverage increase of up to 10% proposed for the area within 60 meters of the water. That's an additional coverage of 3.25%, but it still maintains as a whole the maximum permission of 6.75% for this property overall. Meaning if you measured the lot coverage for the proposed addition along with the existing buildings over the entire lot area of the property, it still is compliant with the zoning bylaw. I just want to make it clear that there are policies in the official plan that do permit up to 10% lot coverage on waterfront properties. So care was given to design this addition to not exceed the maximum cap that the official plan provides in terms of lot coverage for waterfront properties. A maximum GFA of 700 square meters is being requested. Again, that is over the required permission for this property specifically. But again, care was made to ensure that the property, that the proposed GFA did not exceed the maximum cap of 700 square meters that's in the zoning bylaw here today. The maximum boathouse length of 12 meters is proposed, which is 1 meter over the length of the boathouse, the maximum boathouse permission in the zoning bylaw. Again, as I mentioned before, that's to accommodate some new garage doors and still does not require any projection variances or any sort like that. And then the last variance to accommodate the swim dock is a maximum dock surface area of 234.7 square meters. So in counting how much dock deck area you can have in a shoreline structure, the upper story flat roofed area of the existing boathouse actually contributes towards that. And what that has the effect of doing is limiting how much dock area you can have on the main level to use for swimming. So any increase on this property to add docking to the main level to use for swimming has to be cognizant of the area that exists on the upper level of the boathouse, which unfortunately does not contribute towards swimming, but does contribute towards that calculation. So that's that calculation that's being exceeded with this proposal, and we're seeking a variance for today.
Thank you very much, Savas. Does
Sorry.
council have any questions?
Sorry, I have a little bit more to go.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just paused there for a second. So in terms of lot coverage, the purpose that the official plan has in terms of controlling lot coverage is it aims to balance built form and natural form on a property, particularly in the areas close to the shoreline. That's why there's two calculations, one within 60 meters and one over. That's why care has been given to providing that the addition be at the rear of the existing dwelling, and primarily that be the bulk of the rare variance that's being requested here today would be out of view from the lake when you also think about the amount of vegetation along the shoreline. So I've showed two photographs here. This is taken from the top of the boathouse, looking towards the existing dwelling on the subject lands. You can see that there's fairly extensive mature vegetation on both sides of the building. This is the sort of, I think it's southwest side of the building. This would be where the proposed screen porch would be. And this would be the southeast side of the dwelling. And this is the sort of front face of the dwelling. So the addition falls behind this. So you can see that there's existing vegetation that would help to buffer this from view when viewed from the water. And also there's an opportunity as well for the municipality through any approval of this application to make this subject to site plan control, which would have the ability of protecting this feature and also strengthening it or improving it if necessary. I just want to make it clear that no part of the addition actually encroaches into the shoreline area. All of the addition is located beyond 20 meters from the water. In terms of GFA, it's difficult to actually calculate how gross floor area has an impact on a property, being that we're talking about floor area, but I can tell you that the entire basement of this proposed structure, even though it's partially unfinished and proposed not to be finished, counts towards gross floor area simply because it's a walkout basement. So that number has been difficult in the past to quantify, but I can tell you that the amount of GFA proposed, like I said, does not exceed the maximum cap in the zoning bylaw of 700 square meters, and also is proportionate for the building size that's proposed here today. And it does fall very much in character with a lot of the other development we see on Lake Joseph throughout the entire lake and in the immediate area. In terms of the boathouse addition, the dock addition, I just want to show a photograph here of the existing boathouse and dock. That narrow area that I mentioned that exists, that's used for swimming, is here on the southern sort of side of the boathouse. And that's all the family has to use right now to enter and exit the water for swimming. So the proposed swim dock addition comes sort of off the front and across into this area. It itself is a fairly minor addition. It's only 30 square meters, so about 350 square feet. But like I said before, when combined with the upper deck area, exceeds the maximum surface area of the zoning bylaw permissions. It is located somewhat centrally on the shoreline. If you look at the entire shoreline of the structure of the property, the addition of the dock is sort of centered on the property. It has lots of vegetation behind it, along with some natural features like rock. It's a very low profile in nature, so it wouldn't necessarily be very visible from the water. And it's located far from any neighboring property to either side, so there are no really privacy concerns in providing for this addition. Overall, it doesn't exceed the maximum width permission of the zoning bylaw when you measured it from its far end to end. So this would go to show that visually this addition would not serve to make the building appear wider than what is permitted by the zoning bylaw. It's simply only the combined surface area calculation that's offended by this proposal. So in conclusion, I believe the proposed development can be accommodated on the property without it appearing overdeveloped. I believe it's justified to accommodate the growing family and particularly the young children, all lesser than 60 years of age. I do believe it's in character with other development in the area and on Lake Joseph in particular. And in my professional opinion, I believe it's consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020. It conforms to the official plan and it represents good planning. I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does council have any questions? No, I see Nancy Cohen online again, representing Lake Joseph North. So Nancy, over to you.
Hello, everyone again. I have a presentation modified a bit from the previous presentation. So I'm Nancy Cohen, president of Lake Joe North Association. Our since our email is info@ljna.org, that's the best place. I am at 78A Scully Road on the east side of the lake. It's highly unusual that we have two such large planning requests coming to council in the same day. So I'm going to skip the parts that I did on the previous presentation and focus on this one. The wrong PowerPoint. Here we go. Hamer Bay. And here, I'll do full screen for you. So water quality and view from the canoe are super important in Hamer Bay, where our association was founded. This became a huge issue and has largely been resolved by appropriate policies implemented by council and by the residents. According to the notice, this application is asking for an awful lot. Here's a list of them. Savas has detailed most all of them. However, we have a different view of the reasonableness of this request. This lot, here's a picture that I took on Friday of the lot in question from the water. It's 92.6 meters wide, so about 300 feet and 1.1 hectares. So it's fairly representative of the lots in Hamer Bay. Most of the bay is divided into 200 and 300-foot lots. And with very few exceptions, the cottages in this bay conform to the bylaw. Maybe committee of adjustment exceptions, but only very few exceptions requested. However, this lot, I just want to point one other thing out on this picture. So they are claiming a lot of tree coverage, but as you see, there's just a couple trees here in the 20-meter zone, and there is a new pile of dirt here, which is close to the 20-meter zone, if not in it. We believe the requests are excessive. According to the applicant's documents, the existing uses already exceed the bylaw. Currently, they have 8.2% coverage where 6.75 is allowed, and they're asking for 10, which is over 50% more. The request is out of character with the other properties in the bay, and we believe does not conform to the policies and intent of the official plan, which is to limit the density and intensity of development on the lakes to protect the visual qualities. Claims that the plans mitigate any potential visual impacts have not been substantiated. We haven't seen a site plan or anything like that to show what they're planning to do to mitigate their proposal. As previously mentioned in my previous slide presentation, our members were really asking that overbuilding not be permitted and that the bylaws be applied fairly and consistently to all. And these are some quotes from some of the letters I've seen regarding this application, and I believe they're all in your addendum package, so you can read the whole of them. One person wrote, if the application is approved as it stands, one might reasonably wonder why we have bylaws. So there's strong objection in the bay to the current proposal. We currently object to what has been proposed. We would ask for a dramatic reduction in coverage, guarantees that all the accessory buildings will not be used for habitation. Currently, there's a second story on the boathouse, and so there should not be any other secondary buildings for habitation on the lot. We'd like to see that in writing. That there be a detailed site plan for the entire lot, not just the 60-meter zone, before any further consideration of this amendment, and that there be significant security for this work, particularly in consideration of the sand pile in the front lot. So that's our presentation. We really appreciate the opportunity to comment and look forward to working and welcoming this new family onto our lake.
Thank you very much. Does council have any question of Nancy on anyone else? No. Okay. So council will now close the public meeting and reconvene to the regular meeting. So I have a motion that the public meeting held for the following matters is hereby closed and the regular meeting is hereby reconvened. Consent application number B 2024-0008-H and B 2024-0009-H and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0013-H for Pitaway, zoning bylaw amendment application number 2024-0012-H. Could I have a motion to come out of public meeting? Greg and Ken. All in favor? Thank you. And now we move on to delegations, and we are welcoming Hemson Consulting. Who do we have for Andrew? You there? There you are. Okay. Thank you very much. You have the floor. It's yours. Do you
Great.
want to,
Thanks,
your screen
everybody.
sharing? Yeah,
Yeah, I am.
we'll give you a
sharing
couple
my screen.
minutes.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So I'll share my screen. Today's topic is on development charges and the process that has been ongoing since the retainer. What I'll want to do today is just to run through kind of some of the background or study objectives. I'll talk a little bit about the legislative changes, and we'll get into kind of the key inputs into the DC study process in terms of our forecast, the capital program. We'll talk a little bit about the calculated rates that we have, and then we'll get into some rate comparisons and some of our next steps into this initiative here for the township. So just for those who may not be all too familiar with DCs, this is going to be your first development charge bylaw. So it is new, and development charges are imposed on development to pay for growth-related capital infrastructure costs. It effectively pays for new infrastructure and facilities to maintain our service levels. The idea behind DCs is that growth pays for growth. DCs can only be used to fund expansion and development-related activity costs. It cannot be used to fund your regular asset management, repair, and replacement activities. So there is a very stringent use of the way the development charge can be applied for. When we think about the DC study process, there's a requirement in the legislation to follow some specific steps. We have to look at our growth forecast, the amount, type, and location of development. We have to look at what our growth-related capital needs are in terms of what infrastructure is needed in order to facilitate that development that we've projected. There's a historical service level calculation, which we're capped at making sure that development charges can't be used to exceed your historical 15-year service level. So we have to look at the assets that are in place today to ensure what assets are being providing the service, and we can't use DCs to increase that level of service. There's a series of statutory reductions that we have to take into consideration when calculating our rates. Once we've done those few elements, we have our costs that are eligible for development charge recovery. The DCs are then delineated between your residential and your non-residential sector. On the residential side, the charges are on a per unit basis. On the non-residential side, they're levied on a per square foot or per square meter of gross floor area basis. So you may have heard about some of the DC legislative changes and that have taken place over the last several years. There's been obviously a strong push by the government's priority to address affordable housing, build more homes, in which we've seen the Housing Supply Action Plan, the report on the Affordable Housing Task Force in February of 22, and part of that election mandate by the province was to build 1.5 million new homes by 2031. That kind of had the trickle-down effect of a series of bills related to housing, Bill 108, 138, 197, 23, and most recently, Bill 185. Of particular relevance to township and municipalities on development charges. Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, provides exemptions for existing rental units, residential intensification, and nonprofit housing in DCs. There's also further discounts on purpose-built rental units. Bill 185 was the one that just recently received royal assent in early June. And what it did is it reversed a lot of the Bill 23 provisions. Particularly, it removed the mandatory 5-year phase-in. So I was in front of council a little bit of time ago and talked about some of these changes out of Bill 23. This is reverse course on that big one of phasing in your DCs. Secondary to that is your growth-related studies is now reintroduced as a DC eligible cost, and we can recover for those expenditures through the development charges. There's a reduction in how long your DC rates can be frozen for, from 2 years down to 18 months, with the kind of introducing your exemption for affordable housing coming into place on June 1st of 2024. Nothing yet on the attainable housing exemptions, which the province has promised, but that is presumably still to come in forthcoming legislation. So just to get into some of the specifics on the development forecast, what we're seeing here is just kind of a snapshot of the projection of both permanent and non-permanent units and population in the municipality, as well as what we call place of work employment for the purposes of calculating DCs. The quick observation is you might see the permanent population starting to increase quite substantially starting in 2027. And that you see a similar kind of trend on the red line, which is going to be your occupied households starting to increase at that 2027 period. There's a correlation between your households and your population. And the 2027 trigger point is when some of the MZO lands will begin to start being developed, increasing the population within the municipality, part of which is what's driving the need for the implementation of DCs in the community itself. As we see more population and household growth, there is an expectation that there will be an increase in employment activity in the municipality, which will see the employment going to about 1,700 employees by the end of the planning period. So importantly, we're seeing some pretty substantial residential growth on the household side, translating to about 3,400 people over the next 10 years, largely driven by some of the significant development that's taking place or planned to take place in the municipality in the short term. When we think about the consideration of services under the DCA, there is a range of specific services in which the municipality can collect development charges for. What we have is the list of services as outlined in the Development Charges Act, and two different color schemes here. The ones in red are going to be what we're considering as part of our township-wide development charge services. So we are collecting a charge for services related to a highway, which is going to be your roads and public works, waste diversion, fire services, library, parks and recreation, emergency preparedness, and studies. We are going to be looking at the area-specific services, particularly for the servicing of your MZO lands itself. And that's going to be for your water and your wastewater services in particular. We are waiting and continuing to work with staff on the costing and what that's going to look like. And once we do have that, that'll form part of a separate area-specific development charge calculation, which would be in addition to the work that you're seeing here today in terms of what would be applied on a municipal-wide or township-wide approach. So we have the forecast itself, and then we have the second part of that is going to be looking at what is the growth-related capital program and what are the infrastructure needs in order to support the development. And we've had several discussions with staff in order to develop that capital program, which is largely based on your studies that are ongoing as well as your capital budgeting process. We've had to make the particular adjustments as required for under the DC legislation in terms of any grants or subsidies or contributions that the municipality has, which would be reducing the total gross related program. We have our benefit to existing shares. There aren't any available DC reserves on hand because this will be your first bylaw, and any shares of the program which would exceed the 10-year planning horizon in terms of benefits, we put that into what we call as a post-period benefit to be considered under future DC bylaws for recovery. So just to kind of summarize the program itself and the capital program, we have a total gross cost of about $16.6 million. And we see here the services along the left from library, fire, parks and recreation, waste, roads and related services related to highway, development related studies, and emergency preparedness. Your parks and recreation and your fire and your service related to a highway are your two largest contributors of that 16.6 million. Then we move through the columns itself. Our grant subsidies and other recoveries represents about 3.1 million, most of which is being allocated within the parks and recreation service category. Our benefit to existing share is the share of the program that is non-growth related. So that would be not be recovered from development charges. That would have to be funded from non-DC sources, which in your case will be your property taxes or your user rates. There aren't any available development charge reserves on hand, so you'll see that column as 0. Then we have the two other columns, which is under our DC recoverable cost. The in-period share is about $8.4 million. And that $8.4 million collectively is what is being considered for in the calculation of the DC rate itself. And that's what's driving the calculated rates that you'll see on the next slide. So that's the amount that's being recovered for and recouped through development charges, planning to be recouped from the development that we're proceeding over the planning period. Most of which, when we look at that, is being kind of comprised of your three categories of fire, parks and recreation, and services related to highway are your three biggest drivers of that $8.4 million in total. The last column is our other development related share, and that's the share of the program that would be considered for recovery in future DC bylaws. So it's not be considered in the calculation here today, but it is still growth related and it will benefit development over a longer period. So you can recover it in the next DC study when you undertake that. Just to give a bit of an overview of some of the key capital projects here in terms of the gross cost, we have additional acquisitions on the library side of furniture and equipment over the planning period. We have the Rosso Hall expansion, a minor one at $150,000 in the planning period. Within fire, we've got new vehicles, a pickup truck and an aerial truck, combined for closer to $2.2 million. We have the Humphrey Arena dressing room at $2.5 million. Additional park amenities in terms of some diamond lighting, gazebos, new playgrounds at about $500,000. Additional trail development over the planning period. On the roads and public works side, we've got tandem trucks, 2 light trucks, and a tractor for your sidewalk at just over $700,000. And then we have new road and upgrade costs on the road side of closer to $5 million. And then with general kind of development related studies and backup power generators for emergency preparedness also accounted for in the planning period as well. Those are the gross costs of the program, kind of some of the big ticket drivers to the previous slide. These also have to go through the test of the DC Act requirement, what's growth related and what actually gets pulled into the calculation itself. So having a consideration for some of the project costs that we've identified, we have then calculated the DC rates themselves. We have to look at the historical inventories in terms of our service level, what produces or considers to be the maximum permissible funding envelopes and the capital programs. The residential rates that we've calculated are based on 3 different unit types. We have single and semi-detached dwelling units, rows and other multiples, and apartment units. On the non-residential side, they're calculated on a uniform basis on a charge per square meter of gross floor area. So the draft rates that we calculated for residential units for a single and semi-detached unit would be $5,466. The residential charges are differentiated, as I mentioned, by dwelling unit type, which is based on the occupancy patterns of those within those units. Your rows would be just over $4,000 and your apartments would be closer to $3,300 per unit. The pie graph on the right of that table looks at the relationship of the charge per service area itself. So of your $5,400 and $66 single detached dwelling unit rate, what is making up that charge itself? And we see that your services related to a highway is about 26% of that total rate. Parks and recreation is about 35% of that total charge, and your fire services is about 25%. When we think back 2 slides ago, when I referenced the DC eligible share of the capital program of where your capital costs are, it's related to those 3 particular service areas. It's driving the DC eligible cost component. And we see that that's also then reflected in the calculation of the rate we have itself. So those are your 3 kind of larger service areas, which is driving the total rate. For a community that doesn't have the responsibility of water and wastewater in this particular charge, this is pretty common from what we see in municipality to municipality. Roads, parks and recreation are usually the 2 biggest drivers when water and wastewater is excluded from the rates itself. So you may ask yourself, well, what does that rate really mean for other communities relative to Seguin? And we put together just some different communities here in terms of perhaps similar size and scope in various municipalities in your area. So the township's rate is kind of obviously calculated to be still on the lower end of the spectrum. You see that when you get into areas in the district of Muskoka or into Simcoe County, you might see kind of two-part structure here. We have an upper tier charge and a lower tier charge, and then perhaps some area-specific DCs, which we layered on top of that. Anything in the district of Muskoka, you'll have a district of Muskoka charge, and then you'll also have the lower tier charges, which have different services that are layered on top of that. So someone in Huntsville would pay about $24,000 for a DC for a single detached dwelling unit. Here in Seguin, it would be about $5,500, which would be, again, kind of on the lower end of what we see in those other communities. Parry Sound is modestly higher than you in terms of those particular service areas. I will note, when we look at rate comparisons and particularly on development charges, we always have to consider that these are related to the infrastructure needs in order to support the development. And each community is going to be slightly different in that manner. And as you bring in water and wastewater servicing, particularly to that to those lands that require it, those would have additional charges that would be levied on top of here, which we'd have to calculate when that information becomes available, which might alter the service rate or the service unit rate, which one might pay on those particular lands that are going to benefit from that infrastructure. Then we get on the non-residential side. The charges here on a per square meter basis, we've calculated them on $23.84 per square meter. Your services related to a highway charge is about 45% or 46% of that. Fire services represents about 43% of the total. One quick note here, you might notice that there's no charges particularly for library or for parks and recreation. We consider those to be services that are directly attributable and related to residential development. So we don't have a non-residential charge for them. So the charge is reweighted towards the other categories which have an employment benefit or employment driver to it. On the non-residential side, the charge at $23.84 would put the township kind of in the low to middle end of the spectrum here in terms of the calculated rates. Some municipalities such as Bracebridge, for example, just have a District of Muskoka charge. I will note that they are recently introduced a development charge for the non-residential sector. So as those rates come into force later this year, they would start to inch up on that list as well. I guess my other point here, which would also be relevant to the residential rate comparison slide that I had, is that some of these communities are going through the same DC background study process, in which they might be introducing new rates over the couple months here, which might be different from what we have. So let's take that into consideration in terms of the rate comparison itself. So there's a series of policy items that the municipality will have to consider as we get into an implementation stage of the bylaw. As this is going to be the township's first development charge bylaw, first thing we'll actually have to draft a particular bylaw, which will need some legal considerations in order to do that. But you'll have to look at how you want to implement the rates or implement the bylaw itself. What we have and the background study imposes or calculates the maximum permissible rates under the legislation. Council has the authority to implement a rate that's different than what's identified in the background study, and that could mean the full rates can be implemented immediately or partial rates, so you can discount those rates. You can have the authority to phase them in over a period of time. You can delay the effective date of when the rates will come into force. You can also look at any non-statutory exemptions, in addition to what's already imposed under the current legislation. So for example, if the township would look to exempt industrial development from the payment of DCs, you have the authority to do that via the bylaw. You do not have the authority to exempt development charges on certain properties on an ad hoc basis after the bylaw has been imposed. It has to be set out in the bylaw, and any changes that you want to make have to be done through specific amendments to that bylaw through a formal process. You'll have to look at some of the DC indexation practices that are there. It's pretty standard across Ontario municipalities that adjust the rates on a semi-annual or annual basis relative to the change in non-residential construction price index. we'll put that into place in your bylaw, and you'll have to kind of continue to update your rates annually and consistent with that schedule itself. And then the last one is just the effective date of the bylaw itself. You don't have a bylaw which is currently expiring, so you're not up against a theoretical clock in order to have something in place before your existing bylaw expires, but you will have to put a DC bylaw into place with an effective date. And certainly the earlier that the bylaw can come in, the sooner that you can collect for DCs and start to fund the infrastructure required to service that development. So we've gone through, a pretty consultative process with staff, trying to educate them on the DCs and kind of the process that's going to come forward. And we've had some additional kind of senior management team information sessions. We're here today to kind of provide council with that same level of input and information on our study process. We will then, from this date, the intention is to prepare a development charge background study itself, which will be the more formalized document that we'll release for public consultation. You have to release that study 60 days in advance before you can even pass a bylaw. So once we release that study, which is anticipated for August 8th, we will then look to have a public meeting of council on the week of August 26th, with the bylaw being passed on October 7th. We can obviously amend or look to adjust those dates if needed be going forward, but that is the working intention of our plan right now. And certainly want to have a public meeting where we can attract the highest number of people, and that's the intention, is to have it towards late August to capture your non-seasonal non-permanent population that's there. That is the conclusion of my presentation. I know there's a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer any questions or comments one might have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bazinski.
Well, I have 3 questions, but if the chair wants to pass it to, okay. So first question is, can costs approved by council before the development charges bylaw is implemented in place be covered under a development charges bylaw? In other words, council passed, approved some studies in the nature of about $850,000 already related to the development in the minister's zoning order area. And I just want to hear from you that you're quite confident that these charges can be recovered under the development charges bylaw, even though we don't have it in place right now.
So through the mayor and the chair, we would intend to recover those costs through the area specific DC, as that is directly related to the water and wastewater infrastructure required to service that development, and we would embed those costs for recovery.
It's more than water and wastewater. These studies encompass the whole area of the minister's zoning order lands, and they included environmental studies and other studies not related to the road or the wastewater. Would those be covered?
But to my understanding, those studies are related to developing that site. So that it is triggered by development, and we would intend to recover those costs.
I just want to be confident in that. That was my first question. The second question would be that in your table, which is summary of capital program 2024 to 2033, you identify development related studies of $185,000. I was just wondering what those $185,000 were. They're not the studies that we've already approved for the best part of $1 million.
So within the that number of the 185, it captures an update to the development charge background study itself, so the DC study, and it also captures a provision for kind of an unallocated planning related studies that may be required that are unidentified at this point in time. So we put a budget allocation towards it. Some of those studies that you are referencing, Counselor, were intended to be included in the area-specific DC, but we can work with staff to embed some of those into the municipal-wide study with the residual in the area-specific background study required.
Thank you. I'm just, concerned because we've spent in the past and with what council's recently approved, about $1 million for development related studies. And I'd like to be confident that they're included in this table.
Yep. Whether
and then-
it's this table or the area specific table, they'll get captured in one way or
Okay, that
Yep.
would be appreciated. Then the other
Just a second, the CAO would like to clarify a little bit of that question, and then you can go to your third, if that's okay.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I want to hear it from our expert who is preparing this bylaw too. So that, yeah.
There's a difference between what he's presenting today and what will be presented for the MZO.
Understood.
Yeah, that was essentially, Councillor Brzezinski, the point is what you're receiving today is township-wide. This is the proposal for the township-wide DCs. The stuff that you're referencing about the water, wastewater, roads, environmental, et cetera, within the MZO lands will come at a separate time as an area-specific development charge because it'll be very area-specific. We don't provide water and wastewater services in Rosso, Foley, et cetera. That'll come at a later date. We needed those studies to help inform the next component to the DCs, which is the area specific, which is the MZO lands in particular.
Okay, I just will be very interested to see the area specific one. But the last question, and I guess it's also area specific, on this table, it shows that there are gross costs and then DC recoverable costs. So for some of it, it's significantly less than what the township's going to be paying out. So in that case, the development isn't going to pay for itself, I guess. It will pay for part of it, 50 or 60%, depending on what. So there will be a cost to the township ratepayers that DC charges won't be able to cover.
Yeah, so through the mayor and the chair, the gross cost, correct, is about DC in period share is about 50% of the gross cost. However, there is two big components here that I want to make clear of. One is 3 million of that is related to grants, subsidies, and other recovery. So it is going to be intended to be recovered from money that you already have and anticipated funds. Second to that is 2.7 million is what we call as the other development related or post-period benefit. That is growth related, and that will be recovered from DCs, but just not in this particular bylaw. It'll be recovered in subsequent DC bylaw. So it will be recouped from development charges from growth. It's just the way we would have to calculate the rate and the way it's considered for in this bylaw. So only the 2.4 million of the benefit to existing is going to be the share that's non-growth related and non-recoverable.
Okay, no, that's great. And finally, I don't understand why we can have waste diversion covered by Development Charges Act, but we can't have waste management. So for instance, when in the MZO lands, if we need to buy a garbage truck that's going to go house to house collecting garbage, that's not able to be covered by development charges. Similarly, if we need an additional transfer station in the area, it's not covered by development charges.
Yeah, the Development Charge Act is clear that it's the diversion, not the kind of incineration and the waste management function itself, which would be growth related. So we can only include for the diversion activities.
So development doesn't totally pay for itself.
No.
Thank you.
Unfortunately not. Yeah.
Council, any other questions? Councillor Getty?
Thank you, sir. Just under the eligible services under DCA with Seguin consideration, I think I understand what you were saying. Well, I do, but the policing, ambulance, and long-term care under the legislation are billable. Is it a decision as we're developing this that we're not using those, or is it standard not to include those in development charges? With the increase, and I'm thinking the increase in housing, the increase then potentially on ambulatory care, policing costs, they're all billed back to the township at year end. Thank you.
So through the chair, so it would be costs that the township would be incurring and net growth related costs that the municipality would be incurring. So if you're going to be municipalities looking at constructing new ambulance outlets or new EMS trucks in order to accommodate the growth, then we would incorporate that in the capital program. And that's what would drive the DC rate itself in terms of recovery. So it has to be a service that you're providing or where you're expected to retain additional capital costs for.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. It was comprehensive, and I see that you are on our calendar for early August for the next step. So thank you very much for your schedule, and we'll see you again soon.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the staff reports as presented on the agenda for July 15th, 2024 meeting of council. They all appear on your agenda. Could I have a motion? Councillor Getty, seconded. Councillor Adams, all in favor? I would do both of them before we open discussion. Okay. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant provisional approval to the consent application number B 2023-0026-H for Rosso Springs Limited, subject to the conditions set out in the decision. Could I have a motion?
No,
We have to put this on the table before we can have
I'll
discussion.
move it then. You don't have to talk to me like that, but I'll move it.
Okay, could I have a seconder to put it on the table? Terry? Okay, now we can open it up for council discussion.
I would
Councillor
like to
Finson.
defer. I would like to defer this motion to rezone the Rosso Springs property. And do you want me to stop talking? Do I give my reason why I'm going to want it deferred?
I just have to recognize some of them. Go ahead.
Okay, the reason I would like a deferral is that for an update, to update the environmental reports and peer review due to the recent trenching into the lake, which was undertaken after the EIS were completed. And further to that, further clarity on the MOECP investigation that is happening on the property today. So that's my business. Thank you.
So we have a motion to defer. I need a seconder to open the discussion on that. Okay. So, hang on. So I put Gail and then Ted.
At this point, I would be allowing the applicant or the applicant's agents to speak
Before we vote.
before
Okay.
you do any discussion.
Okay, so the applicant from Rosso Springs is here. Could you identify yourself and provide your address and name of the company, please, and make sure the little light's on.
Lights on. Okay, good afternoon, Mayor, members of council and staff. My name's Leo Deloitte. I'm with Deloitte Development Solutions, 419 Surrey Drive, North Bay, P1C0A1. I represent Rosso Springs, a company owned by several individuals, number of whom are locally based and in the township. The proposals there's two proposals. One is a consent application to create a 4.8 hectare lot with 129 meters of frontage on Maplehurst and retaining a 23.7 hectare retained parcel. The second application is a rezoning to reconfigure the SR zoning area to allow additional design flexibility and to replace the rural zoning, replace it with environmental protection based on the studies that we've undertaken. And the purpose of that is to protect the natural environment. No additional residential permissions are being requested. One lot is allowed now. One lot would be allowed, one lot, one residence at the end of the process. In terms of remarks, I just want to submit that the project complies with the provincial policy statements, Seguin's official plan, and strategic plan. We heard many concerns voiced at the previous public meeting, and we took those to heart and we prepared a response document, and that's contained in Schedule D of your agenda, starting, I think, around agenda page 269. And the other thing that we did since the public meeting was we revised the zoning application to address those concerns. I just want to indicate that Rosso Springs accepts the recommendations in the staff report, including the proposed conditions of approval. Detailed building design will be dealt with at a future stage, but I do want to assure council that the future development will be in accord with the stock SR3 zoning. We're not asking for any variations. So in conclusion, Rosso Springs asks that council approve the rezoning and consent applications, and Mr. Rhodes is here, as is Rebecca Gavril, to answer any questions. Thank you.
Does council have any questions? Given that the Ministry of the Environment's on site today, how do the studies that were done before they arrived relate?
So I wasn't aware the MOE was on site today. That's new information. But we have done all the studies and we have worked with your peer review consultant on this project.
The reason for the deferral was because new information is available as of today. But Mr. Rhodes, do you have anything to add?
Not much, other than, we have a response with our expert environmentalist here. If you would like to hear some information from her regarding the swale. The swale is literally 4 inches deep, 4 to 6 inches deep. And it is a result of the cross drain that comes from Maplehurst. So it's on the south side of Maplehurst to the north side of Maplehurst, which comes onto our property. There's a drain, a municipal drain, that spreads water onto our property. One of my partners asked the municipal staff if we were okay to put that swale to allow the water to come down to Lake Rosso, and that was approved 3 months ago. I've not heard anything about the Ministry of Environment being on our property today. I don't know why they're there. I have not received any notice, nor have any of my partners here. So that's all new information to me. But the environmental reports have been put forward and peer reviewed. And if we have any questions about our experts here.
Councillor Finson will give you some more
Okay, I can
background.
answer some of what you're asking. The MOE was called because of the green algae on the lake. They came out, they did an investigation. You have been informed because I was right there when the email was sent to you from MOE. It's not to you particularly, but to somebody on your team. And so they've been out, they've done testing. The testing won't be back till next week. We can't do anything with that property, I don't believe. We have to defer today because the MOE is looking at the property. There's a problem. There's green algae where you rerouted the water to the lake. So there's a problem. They're looking into it. I don't know anything, like I can't give you what's wrong, but there's something wrong. And so they're looking into it. They're looking into it. They've done some testing with the water. They've been out to look at the property, and their results will be back next week. That's all I know. And the MNR has been notified as well.
I
Can I
believe
ask
the
a-
original request came from local residents in and around the area, but the deferral is put forward until we know the full results of all the technical studies from the MOE and the MNR.
Can I ask our environmental expert to comment on that?
Yes, can you approach the microphone and identify yourself, your address, and the name of your corporation?
Yeah. Oh, can you hear me okay? My name is Rebecca Govro. I am a biologist with FRI Ecological Services, 1875 Seymour Street, North Bay, Ontario, P1A 0C7. So respecting the drainage swale, I went out on site on June 28th, so just a few weeks ago, and I do have photos that show the shoreline and the frontage area. There is no algae. In fact, there's not even aquatic vegetation for most of the location where the swale outlets. The swale isn't actually dug right to the shore. It stops short of that, probably 10 meters or so. I didn't measure the exact amount, but at the time that I saw the swale, Mr. Rhodes said, it's quite narrow. It's well vegetated on either side. I did see some photos that were submitted, I suspect, by a resident of the algae. So that was not present when I looked, but what I do know about algae is it has to do with phosphorus inputs to a lake. So nothing that's happening on the Rosso Springs property or has happened contributes phosphorus. So what happens when algae grows is there's nitrogen in the lake naturally. Phosphorus is the limiting factor. When there's phosphorus inputs, it allows things to grow. So they're able to take up the nitrogen and the phosphorus and grow, which results in algae blooms. The reason we have septic systems that are functioning properly these days is because there isn't phosphorus inputs anymore. So I suspect if there's extra phosphorus inputs to the lake, it has to do with existing developments, fertilizers of lawns, faulty septic systems. It certainly isn't anything that's coming from the subject property of the application. So I can't speak to why the algae is there, but I would just say that it doesn't have to do, science doesn't support the fact that anything that's happened there is the reason for the algae. So I'm open, certainly welcome to answer any questions you have.
I won't claim to be an environmental expert, but I'd like to hear the results of the study from the experts in the government. Councillor Bazinski.
Just a couple of quick things. I mean, I've seen all sorts of correspondence calling it a swamp, a bog, et cetera, et cetera. How do you characterize the wetland? Is it a fen, a bog, a swamp?
So the portion of the property that is wetland is considered hardwood swamp.
Okay, a hardwood swamp. And in terms of the ecological functions of that swamp, how do you see the a development, housing, one house affecting the ecological functions and
So
features?
There's no development proposed in the wetland feature itself. So all of the development, including the SR1 zoned area, is outside of any area identified as wetland.
I had another question, but it'll come back to me.
Councillor Getty.
Thank you. It's not really a question, it's more information for the applicant. I was on the property less than 4 hours ago. The trench that's been dug down to the water may not go directly to the water. There is water in that trench that is running very slowly, but there is in Cameron Bay, and you are the expert in regards to algae, but I will say that it's evident that there is sediment runoff coming from that swale into the water, extensive sediment swale. And I would suggest that it may be worthwhile for the applicant, just so that you understand as this process goes through the MOE, to see the sediment that is running, in fact, into Cameron Bay. Whether that affects algae, I don't know, you're the expert, but just as a layperson, there's definitely sediment running into that bay that wouldn't naturally run into that bay.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Sediment is a different issue from algae. They're completely separate.
Thank you.
Councillor Bazinski.
I remembered. The one thing that I haven't really seen in all of the reports and so on haven't really seen too much attention being paid to the shoreline and going out into the water. And for me, I'm a little concerned because if you were going to put a dock and have a large watercraft in there, it could have some impact on the ecological system in the lake right now. So, I mean, my suggestion would be that you have a look at that, because I can see you could engineer a cottage potentially or something, but the access to the water, that's one of my big areas of concern personally.
Thank you.
You say you were given permission to do a trench. Is that in any part of the reports we have? If
It's my understanding, so it wasn't my permission directly. It's my understanding this happened after the reports and things were completed, and it was in response to an emergency situation.
do we have anything to go by? Like,
I'm not aware of that. I can explain how the situation works, so
I'd just like to know who gave permission to do that trench. That's what
It's my understanding from speaking with the owners that they got permission from someone at the township to do the work.
if it was somebody in the township, we should have that on record.
Yes, we should, because there's really, you can't dig in an EP zone.
Nothing should be done in EP.
So the other, Councillor Bazinski's issue about watercraft, the depth of the water at the shoreline is 6 or 7 inches. And there's no dredging allowed. There's no chance of a boathouse and no chance of a permanent dock. So that has been clearly identified in writing by our planning department. So right now we have a motion to defer on the table. Do we have further comments, or shall we call a vote? Okay, so we have, the deferral is moved by Councillor Finson, seconded by Councillor Collins. All in favor of a deferral, and that is carried until we have full results. What do I need to do?
So, just the date. That's okay. And the other one,
Do I have to read the other one too?
if you're gonna defer, you gotta get it on the table.
Okay, we have a second part to this, which we need to put on the table in order to make it stand. So I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-071, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-010-002-22800, application number R 2023-0026-H for Rosso Springs Limited is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. So I need somebody to put it on the table. You can do that. Just, we need to take action, okay? And a seconder, Councillor Getty. And we need to vote on it, whether, do we need to defer? Or we could just defeat
Yeah,
it?
there's two parts to this application. You do ask to defer it again, same like you did the first.
Make a motion to defer this part of it, and then we need a seconder for the deferral.
So I will move to
Councillor-
defer.
Okay, I'm not spelling it right. Deferral by Councillor Finson, and a seconder to defer, Getty. All in favor of deferring, and that is carried. Thank you. I need the clerk to tell me the process. And now I have to date, okay.
This is the next thing.
Okay, so once we have the fulsome reports from the two provincial bodies, it'll be reconsidered. Okay, I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-072, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-030-004 01200, application number R 2024-0011-H, D. Lorenzo, lifting of the H symbol, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. And I need to put that on the table for Councillor Getty and Councillor Bazinski. Okay. We have a staff report recommending the lifting of the H. Is there any council discussion? Councillor Getty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that we defer this application to remove the H hold until such time as a peer review is conducted on the EIS that was submitted relevant to this property by Riverstone. I understand that this has been a very complex case, not being on council in 2018 and 2019. There's been a lot of work done by staff. I recognize the applicant's right to rejuvenate that property, but of the concerns that I have, in 2019, Resolution 2019-414 was passed by council that at such time as when an application is made for the removal of the hold zone provision C4-31H on the subject property, council will direct the planning department to A, notify the Clear Lake Association executive of the application, and B, ensure that the Clear Lake Association or its designate is involved in the environmental impact assessment review process to the extent possible. While I recognize that there has been a lot of time, changeover of staff, the reality is that we as a council did not do that. And my concerns relative to the EIS is that the site-specific habitats were only reviewed in one season. As per the consultant's note, it was the wrong season. Our own recent water quality monitoring report by Hutchinson Environmental identifies that Clear Lake is the only lake in Seguin with a significant upward phosphorus trend. And the report used an outdated site plan as a basis for their study. So I feel that to the intent of Resolution 2019-414 is the reason why I'm asking for the deferral. Thank you.
To what timeline?
Until a peer review is conducted on the submitted EIS report, or at the request of the satisfaction of the Clear Lake Association to bring it back forward.
Councillor Collins.
Just like to ask Councillor Getty a question. The peer review, is Seguin paying for the peer review? Who's paying for the peer review? Should we be paying for the peer review is what I'm going to ask you. Should we be paying for it? I think we should.
I think that it was the intent of council, and I think we should be paying for the peer review.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I know there's someone in the audience that would like to speak to this. So would you like to approach the microphone and, although we know who you are, identify yourself?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm Stefan Scherbach. I was supposed to be online earlier. I'm with Planscape Inc. I'm a registered professional planner with Planscape Inc. 104 Kimberley Avenue, Bracebridge. We are here today representing the Di Lorenzo family, and I just have a very brief discussion, if I may, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. The Di Lorenzos are the owners of the commercial property, and we've been working with them since 2017 and very familiar with the most recent planning application that was completed by this council, maybe not all of you, but this council in 2019, forming the basis of this holding symbol application. I just want to take the opportunity to remind council and the public that the existing commercial use is established on the subject lands. The application has been submitted today to only lift the holding zone. So that the applicants can proceed with the construction of a relocated existing unit on the subject property and permit the demolition and replacement of one other commercial unit. This application does not add any more units that do not already exist or were approved back in 2019. This was all contemplated as part of that last zoning application. In total, as per the staff report, there are a total of 8 commercial units that include 2 housekeeping cabins, 5 rental cabins, 1 accessory dwelling, and previously the subject lands had 10 legal units, and the owners at that time decided to reduce the number of units to address some of the concerns expressed by council and the public. When this application was debated back in 2019 and after the statutory public meeting, I think the owners and myself were surprised that council ended up using this holding symbol as a tool to address the replacement of 2 existing units. After many discussions with staff at the time, we needed to fully understand the specific intent of the language that's included in the bylaw to lift the holding symbol. In that zoning bylaw, it only refers to OP policy B15C. And the only terms of reference to follow for the scoped environmental report is in your official plan, and that's clearly laid out in that bylaw. Riverstone Environmental was retained to complete the review, and this report and their addendum are included in this application in front of you today. So, Madam Mayor, members of council, this is a very straightforward request under the Planning Act. And within it, there's very specific terms in providing instructions to the applicant and the approval authority that once the condition has been satisfied, the hold is obligated to be removed. There should be very little planning debate as the use is already established, as was done in 2019 through that extensive process. And it was properly vetted by council and through that previous planning request. I received a copy of the staff forwarded me the copy of the Clear Lake Association letter last week, and I just want to speak to it briefly. Again, as previously mentioned, the Planning Act clearly states that the approval authority is obligated to lift the hold once the conditions have been met. Lifting the hold is a very prescriptive and predictable process. The bylaw that was passed in 2019 purposefully included this policy to scope the terms, so it was clearly laid out. There was no room for discussion or negotiation because your official plan set the process forward. And again, this was council's intention back in 2019 to do this. If a peer review was to be completed, it needed to be included in that bylaw to say that the study is to be done and peer reviewed. Again, this is a very prescriptive process under the Planning Act that clearly states the only condition to be met is the submission of the study in accordance with that specific policy. And then Riverstone Environmental, I think this council is very familiar with this consultant. I believe Seguin uses them for peer review discussions. They're very familiar with your official plan and the policies and the protection of the environment and water quality. Water quality is briefly addressed in the scope report, and it's also clearly addressed in the previous staff report back in 2019. In addition, as previously mentioned, the reduction of the units from 10 to 8 is a net gain for the water quality of Clear Lake. And again, this was all discussed and laid out in 2019. The previous water quality studies for Clear Lake includes this property with the existing development rights. All of this stuff has already been studied and in place. And by reducing it 2 units, again, we're at a net benefit here. There's no increase to phosphorus through this site-specific approval that wasn't already reviewed back in 2019. So if a peer review if a peer review was to be completed, it needed to be in the language to lift the holding symbol, because again, it's a very prescriptive process. There was also questions about the owners being transparent. This is not true at all. I attended the CLA meeting back at the time to clarify their intentions, correct any misinformation, and all this information was expressed to council at the time. There's nothing new that's happening through this application. They're just carrying on with the instructions that this council gave to our clients. The proposed development is the exact same that was contemplated at the last zoning. Requiring building design, architectural plans, and septic designs, again, aren't part of this condition. Septics are properly vetted by the authority having jurisdiction, being the Mattawa North Bay Conservation Authority. And so to have all this information up front is just really not appropriate in this instance. So in conclusion, Madam Mayor and Council, approval of the original zoning bylaw was conditional on a study that specifically addressed OP policy B15C. That's in front of you. The consultants, which you're familiar with, are appropriate with this policy direction and provided the work in front of you. And I would respectfully request that Council pass the bylaw to lift the hold, which is the same recommendation proposed to you by staff. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm available to ask. And if there's any technical questions, I believe Mr. Shaw from Riverstone is also online and paying attention if there's any technical requirements. So we're here to help. Thank you.
I just have a question. Have building permits been submitted for the renovations to the properties or the cabins, the housekeeping cabins yet on the property?
No. You can't until this hold
Right,
is being
okay.
lifted, right?
But
Yeah.
what's the next step from the Di Lorenzo family?
So if the holding symbol is lifted, then they're going to proceed with their building permit applications, probably for one, not for both. I think they're just looking at a staged process to just move forward one at a time. But again, it's just lifting this one barrier so that they can proceed with their design.
Okay, and I believe no matter what, based on the bylaw, it will be after the building permit and the septic are renewed, the property will be controlled by site plan control.
Absolutely, correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Business.
And I think prior to the building permit application, there has to be a demolition permit application.
Correct. Yes, that's right. And septic as well, which is through the Mattawa, of course.
I don't know if the site alteration bylaw will appear. It depends how far back it is. Councillor Bazinski?
I think the crux of the issue in my mind is the impact on water quality. There's no question that is an existing tourist commercial and has certain rights as that use. And I think people maybe are concerned that even though the floor area isn't going to be, it's going to be increased, the total floor area, but it's not going to be that significantly increased. I think people are concerned, I'm not saying rightly or wrongly, but the fact is now, if all of the buildings are brought up to spec, you're going to have a lot more use on the property. That would be my read of the correspondence and so on. I think the issues to me would be, how do you ensure that there isn't going to be any more phosphorus loading on the lake because it's got some phosphorus issues. And then two, I'm not sure what their proposal is for use of the water, because to be honest, that's where you get a lot of conflicts in use on the water. So if it's going to be similar to what it is, and people are going to come up and basically have a less expensive recreational experience because it's not a resort, that might be good. It might also be worthwhile to note, are they going to be allowed to bring up power boats and so on, that will have an impact on the lake in terms of a recreational type of carrying capacity, because the lake is over recreational carrying capacity.
I think the Ministry of the Environment has said it is close, but it's not at capacity.
No, that's a biological. I'm talking about the
trout.
But I'm talking about the recreational, which is the number of users and so on. It's over the recreational carrying capacity.
Taylor, can you weigh in here on the recreational carrying capacity and the trout capacity?
Through you, Madam Chair. To answer some of those questions, in 2019, when the property was rezoned, it actually lost some development rights. So from an RCC perspective, I guess you could say it was downzoned. From a lake trout perspective, it is not yet a lake trout capacity at capacity lake trout lake. And it wasn't in 2019 either. And I double checked the MOE's website and they still don't have it updated. So it is just being monitored. Similarly, the opinion in 2019 from a phosphorus perspective was the same, that since the property is being downzoned, it was a net reduction to phosphorus loading. And it was also to be expected that there would be new septic envelopes, proposed septic systems. If specifics are requested by council, though, I believe Al Shaw is available either by Zoom or on the call somehow, and he could probably go into a bit more specific detail than what I am. But I did note his environmental report didn't project major impacts in this regard. So I think with the history and where the application is today, it does meet the intent of the official plan.
I can answer just one brief question, if I may, if you're trying to get Al Shaw in. A couple of very good questions. Thank you for that. With respect to the phosphorus, I mean, Al did provide a brief response in terms of some of the Clear Lake questions. And, you know, the development on the property will include a new septic system, which is located 60 meters behind the area. It slopes away. The question about ensuring that phosphorus is not going to be increased through the implementation of Riverstone's site-specific recommendations. It is his professional opinion that the phosphorus load will not increase by doing that. Any questions related to the shoreline? There's no development proposed through this application on the shoreline. In fact, he's actually asked for increased vegetation plantings, which again is a benefit to ensure that phosphorus is not done. So there's a number of checks and balances that are in place to ensure that's in place. Again, this is an existing property with existing development rights. The existing development rights were approved by council. This is just a holding symbol to sort of pass go. And through this report, and I mean, Al might be here to speak. Okay, I'll let him deal with some of the technical stuff, but good questions. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw, can you weigh in on some of these questions? There you are. Okay. Thank you. Can you just identify yourself, your company, and your address?
I sure can. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Al Shaw. I'm with Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc. in Bracebridge. We're at 49 Quebec Street in Bracebridge, P1L2A5. Great questions, and certainly appreciate the effort and the thoughts regarding water quality for the lake. When we started on this, well, first I'll say Taylor and Stefan both had very good things to say, very correct things to say. When we started on this, the idea of water quality was top priority. And really the way we approach it is that we want to see gains along the way where development is being proposed. And Stefan correctly noted, and so did Taylor, that way back when the number of units was reduced from 10 to 8, I believe was what was noted. So that was a benefit. The new septic systems that were going to be installed further away from the water, from the existing septic systems, and also what hasn't been noted yet is where it's being proposed, and it's on the newest site plan, where it's being proposed topographically, it's very beneficial in that it drains slightly away from the lake first. It eventually does come around to the lake, but it drains away. So any overland flow that would be coming from the septic system would drain away from the lake first, making its way around, but going through more vegetated area before entering the lake. So there's lots more opportunity for uptake, for evaporation, for loss of any of nutrients before it gets to the lake. So that's another
a benefit. And then the last thing, which as Stefan just noted, was that there was vegetation, revegetation of some of the shoreline that was being proposed as well, providing not only a visual buffer, but again, more opportunity for uptake of nutrients before entering the lake. So from a water quality perspective, we were very confident that what's happening here is progressively putting pluses into the program here before before the development is approved, but certainly providing opportunity for advances and pluses for water quality in the lake.
Councillor Finson.
How long would a peer review take? Like how many weeks would it be?
Between 4 and 6 months is what Taylor has indicated.
Okay.
And because it's summer, we don't know, really.
Okay. I was just thinking that if the peer review was done, then everybody would be happy. Like it's always nice to have all the sides. I mean, you've done everything you were supposed to do. I agree. It was done very well, like I would say. But whether it was in the bylaw or not, it was said, it was written, right? It was written down that we would do that. So maybe not to you, it wasn't, but it was discussed here at council, and it was in writing that we would give them that. We would give them the peer review on the how is it worded? I think
It's worded that they were required to do a scoped EIS, environmental
Yes.
impact study. In
And
the
then what comes-
direction to staff, council discussed involvement of Clear Lake. And as I'm in meetings with Clear Lake, yes, it got skipped, new staff. Unless it's in a bylaw or a resolution, unfortunately, it often doesn't communicate.
But we did say we would do it as a council, yes? Okay.
Councillor Getty.
No, and sorry if it's for the confusion. It was that as a council committed to Clear Lake to ensure that they were notified of the EIS process and were able to participate to the extent possible. There wasn't a requirement in the resolution for a peer review.
Councillor Bazinski.
And there are no proposed new docks or boathouses like any in-water structures in the development proposal. So in terms of generating additional boat traffic, are we to assume that that's not what this development's going to be catering towards? People bringing their own boats up and just question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of, the increased boating activity. I mean, it's sort of no different than anybody who has a cottage today. You're not regulating boats. I mean, if I can park a boat on the dock, I can do that. If I can, I mean, it's a bottom line is, I don't know. I'm looking at the planning end. I'm not looking at boat traffic, which is not part of the official plan process.
Councillor Adams.
I guess I'm hearing that it was staff's fault.
Oversight, new staff.
Oversight, yeah, whatever. Does that give us the right to not we should lift the whole part? Should we not? Are we doing that?
Staff's recommendation is to lift the H and encourage the applicant to go through the official process of building permits, septic permits, and site plan control.
See, I wasn't involved in I wasn't here. But I think the hold should be lifted and the rest be done myself.
We currently have a discussion to defer on the table. Oh, sorry, Councillor Fellner next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question for environmental consultant. So, and I remember this one pretty distinctly because it was a pretty interesting ride for a new guy, to tell you the truth. See a bunch of familiar faces out there. So this, when you scoped it for the septic system, is it one septic system's gonna service the proposed, all the new proposed little cabins and reconfigurations? Or is it multiple septics?
Through you, Madam Chair, the relocated unit to the northern end
Alright.
is going to have its own separate individual system that's 60 meters away from the lake, as Mr. Shaw mentioned, draining away from the lake, you know, so that one will be separate. The replacement one at the center, I mean, they're not there yet. I think there needs to be a proper analysis with the existing system to see if it can accommodate this one, because I mean, if you enlarge a unit and you add a bedroom, that impacts your septic capacity. So we're not there yet with the second one, but the other one, the original proposal is to do that. And yes, it has to be reviewed through the CA.
Yeah. No, I just wondered because I remember, if I remember correctly, in order to reach this agreement, the owner voluntarily gave up a huge, if I remember, it was huge.
Right.
Right of the C4 zoning. I mean, they could have done something far more expansive, and if I remember correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong, that what's drawn here is what has to be, that's the extent of the development. So whatever docks are showing, whatever buildings are showing, that's it, right? And that goes under a site plan agreement. So it can never be any more than that.
Right. Through you, Madam Chair, that's absolutely right. I think if they want to do anything else, they're coming in front of this council. And especially related to the site plan as well. So
yeah,
any new units or uses must be placed in front of here. I think any docking would be subject to your zoning bylaw, if anything. But there's been no discussion about anything happening along the waterfront. They're really, their focus has just been on the units right now.
Yeah.
And my understanding is the drawing we've got now is a very preliminary form of a site plan. After building permits and septic, there'd be a site plan that talked about the plantings and everything else and the pathways and all that stuff. Okay.
Well, I would assume they have to go through the new process, which would be site alteration agreement prior to building permit.
Yep.
If it was a phased approach, then it's just a phased approach, right?
Okay. So right now
I wasn't done.
on off. You've moved a deferral. Do we have a seconder for the deferral? Count, okay. The public meeting happened in 2019, I'm afraid, according to our clerk. So
Under the Planning Act, there's no requirement for a public meeting to remove the hold symbol. So there is no opportunity for that. Yes.
So right now we vote on the deferral.
So you have a mover
And a
defer
seconder.
Any discussion on the deferral and then the vote on the deferral?
No,
What's the specific wording
the deferral is, I guess, kind of until, you want to read your motion, the exact motion?
Until a peer review has been conducted on the submitted EIS.
And according to Taylor, that's a 4 to 6 month delay. So we now vote on whether to defer. And it's the only thing we're voting on here is the H. That's all we're voting, deferring the removal of the H. That's the only issue on the table at present. So all in favor of deferring? 2, all in favor of, or all against deferral, sorry. I will put my hand up. So it is not deferred. So hang on, wait, you'll take care of that. So now we vote on the original motion, which I will read again, that bylaw number 2024-072, being a bylaw to amend Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-030-004-01200, application number R 2024-0011-H for Di Lorenzo, lifting the H symbol, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. All in favor of removing the H? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's carried. So I look forward to working with you and your applicant to follow all the processes. I believe the township has tools to monitor and keep water quality front and center. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shaw, if you're there. Michelle, I believe, on treasury. She's had a long sit. So
Yeah,
over to
this is-
you, Michelle, for our update.
Thank you. This is your regular monthly financial update to June 30th, 2024. Not a lot of change since the previous one, but we are starting to whittle away at the deficit that was caused by the March thaw event. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Does council have any questions for Michelle? I'll just ask you a quick one. The capital projects at only 16% spent to date, is that normal? Because we're basically halfway through the year. Shouldn't we be near 50?
Yeah, no, it's very normal, particularly for things like vehicles. Like, you know, the fire truck that's out there could take some time, and that's $650,000 in the budget. So we'll start to see the invoices for all the capital projects in the next few weeks.
Okay, so we don't see them till we pay for them.
That's correct.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions for Michelle? Okay, thank you very much. Keep it going down. Yep. And now we have the one item in business that I will say I asked Craig to bring forward because it came to us from AMO. And for the first time ever, the Ministry of Health is going to be an attendee at AMO. And so they were asking for councils to pass this. So it's a long one, so bear with me. I have a motion. Whereas the state of healthcare in Ontario is in crisis, with 2.3 million Ontarians lacking access to a family doctor, emergency room closures across the province, patients being derostered, and 40% of family doctors considering retirement over the next 5 years. And whereas it is becoming increasingly challenging to attract and retain adequate healthcare workforce throughout the health sector across Ontario. And whereas the Northern Ontario School of Medicine University says communities in Northern Ontario are short more than 350 physicians, including more than 200 family doctors, and half of the physicians working in Northern Ontario are expected to retire in the next 5 years. And whereas Ontario municipal governments play an integral role in the healthcare system through responsibilities in public health, long-term care, paramedicine, and other investments. And whereas the percentage of family physicians practicing comprehensive family medicine has declined from 77 in 2008 to 65% in 2022. And whereas per capita healthcare spending in Ontario is the lowest of all provinces in Canada, and whereas a robust workforce developed through a provincial sector-wide health human resources strategy would significantly improve access to health services across the province. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin urges the province of Ontario to recognize the physician shortage in the Township of Seguin and Ontario, to fund healthcare appropriately, and to ensure every Ontarian has access to physician care. Can I move it? I shouldn't. May I have a mover? Okay, Ken? Hang on. And Greg. Is there any discussion? If you read the AMO paper that's in their chunk of the correspondence, one of the things they don't want to see happening, which is already happening, is one town fighting against another town to get the doctor to come to them. They're buying, they're advertising, they're buying access, they're buying homes. They don't want one town fighting against another town throughout Northern Ontario. So that's part of the reason for this. All in favor? Thank you. Council reports. Who went first last time? Gail. Over to you.
Got it. Okay, I had a Belvedere Heights, a special Belvedere Heights meeting, discussing the new beds and how we are moving forward and things are going well. Gosh, oh, went to a Rosso Caring Community meeting, and the good news is we're getting Lunch and Learn, and that will be starting in October. They'll be at the Rosso Hall. We've also doing a high tea and decorating hats. Anyway, so I'm all in for that. I've met with some residents, Lake Rosso North Association. I've been down to the Rosso Springs property a few times. Went out to a beautiful social at the mayor's house. It was lovely, and that's all. Thank you. Oh, I was at something else. Oh, the gardens. They did the Horticultural Society from Perry Sound did the gardens in Rosso. And I was out to that and I got stopped and I didn't get to all the gardens, but it was very nice.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the Seguin business meeting on the 4th. On the 13th, we had the Sugar Lake AGM. On the 18th, I'm going to be having a meeting, the District of Perry Sound Municipal Association, while we're meeting in Magnetawan this Thursday. And tonight I have a meeting with the Maple Lake Petitioners group at 7:30. So I'm busy.
Councillor Fellner.
Thank you, Mayor. I had Park to Park meeting last week. No, the week before last. It was a very long meeting. I think we're progressing away. We have a bridge we want to replace in the fall, and it looks like we should be successful in getting second intake funding in order to replace that. I also had a municipal board meeting for the pool last week, and at which it was disclosed to us that the early works package has gone significantly over the contemplated budget. There's some discussion. There was quite a bit of discussion of exactly how much, but it's pretty significant. It's about $2.5 million, $2.5 to $3 million. What that does to the overall impact to the pool budget is a little cloudy at the moment, because there's some contingencies that were being carried in until this one reared its head. Everything else was tracking pretty well on budget. So there's no real final consensus right now, but it's being looked into pretty seriously. I had numerous calls from residents in my ward the last few weeks, as evidenced by the 2 applications that were in the council chambers today. A lot of concerns. that type of thing. And, you know, summer's well underway and it's busy, lots of people around. That was my 2 weeks.
Counselor Getty.
Thank you, Mayor. Been quiet from a meeting front, again as well. Good that I have an unlimited phone plan. Been talking to a number of people. But, Mayor and myself, we had, as mentioned in the meeting, council, we had a meeting with the Clear Lake Association. And I've been dealing with a number of issues specific to my ward, and staff have been able to help out and resolve them expeditiously. So thank you.
Counselor Bazinski.
Yes, I've had a number of conversations with ratepayers in my ward with respect to road conditions, although after having gone to the mayor's social, I'm not 100% sure that, you know, if they would see what their roads are like in some of the other parts of the township. However, that doesn't necessarily make it right, but it is what it is. I've had a couple of inquiries, which I forwarded on to our Director of Public Works with respect to people that have private roads and they'd like the township to take them over. And, you know, it might be good to consider in the future to have something, a little info package about private roads and the process if they wanted the township to take it over, what would have to be done. But Tom was quite quick to point out how many private miles or kilometers of road could be done, and we really don't have a budget to do it. So anyway, but that was starting to pop up. And then I did attend the mayor's social, so that was good. Thank you.
Ken.
I'm going to say I attended the mayor and Miguel's social.
Well, that's right.
It was a great day. I only had the one Horseshoe Lake Association meeting on Saturday. It was pretty quiet. Of course, you get a number of calls. We're all getting that. I do have my Ferris Hill meeting this Saturday from 10 to 12. So Ferris Road, but we're discussing the hill with the Ferris Road ratepayers. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Most of what I have, most of you have mentioned the Business Association meeting on the 4th. Ted was there. The 10th, Councillor Getty and I with Clear Lake. The 10th was also the pool meeting that I was at that Councillor Fellner referred to. Sugar Lake Association on Saturday, and then I left that early to go to the airport for the 2nd anniversary of the Wave Fiber Mill. I didn't make her fashion show on Friday night because I had some guests. But the Globe and Mail was there, apparently, and are planning to run an article on Seguin fashion. And so that'll be interesting. I don't know if any of you have seen the coat that I bought from her, but one of the things I did was tell her that she had to put the label "Made in Seguin" on the outside of the mayor's coat, which she has done. So she is selling more than she can make, and most of her customers are in London and Paris. Maybe the Roots does too, but I don't own any Roots. But anyways, she is selling as many clothes as she can make. So that's a woman that delivers. I just want to mention one thing. This morning, I was in McDougall to receive a $4,800 check for the pool from it's going to be the Pickleballers of West Perry Sound. Now, the first $4,800 came from the Pickleballers of McDougall, and all the other pickleball organizations are being asked to contribute. If you go to the Moose FM site on the pool, you'll see the dollars are coming up. The seniors of Perry Sound and the retired teachers together are hoping to raise $100,000 and get their name on the walking track. They're well over 10 grand now, and all of this is in the matching campaign, so they might just make it. There are presentations being made at the Gardens and Lakeland, and they've got an ambassador at the Lakeland. And so I urge you and any organizations you're part of, the Horticultural Society, whoever, I've got the plans, but get on board. If you've been on our website, one of the neatest things I think was that a little boy, he's 6, arrived at the children's soccer game last Thursday and sold ice cream sandwiches. And he has netted, because he told me his mother made him pay for the sandwiches. So he now understands the difference between the gross revenue and the net revenue. He netted $80 on one Thursday at the soccer game. Moose would like to interview him. He's not ready for that. So we're still working on that. But that's community enthusiasm and uptake.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of quick updates. Over the coming weeks, the township will be asking for residents to participate in 2 separate surveys. One to assess the township's communications and engagement, and the second to inform decisions related to the programming and ice time at Humphrey Community Center. Both will be available online and in paper form at the municipal office. Please watch Seguin's social media channels and keep an eye out for our summer newsletter for details. The township is hosting a free online seminar on July 25th that will highlight several of the township's key environmental and climate change initiatives. This will provide residents and interested stakeholders with an opportunity to ask questions and learn more about how to get involved with the various projects. Georgian Bay Biosphere and the township are hosting a community Phragmites cut on August 1st from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m. at the Humphrey Barn and Nature Trails. All are welcome to attend to learn about this invasive species and what we can all do to help. And last but certainly not least, our prized Rosso Memorial Hall turning 100 this August. The township is working with partners in the community to host a day-long centennial celebration on August the 16th. This will include live music, tributes to the hall's history, refreshments, and more. Again, watch our website and social media for more information.
Thank you. And the environmental thing, I can't attend because of another, Forrest did say it would be on YouTube for those of us that can't make that actual date.
Can I say one little thing?
Yes.
I went to the Biosphere fluorescent thing in the evening. It was fabulous. It was I have to say, kudos to Preston. He is lovely. He was he taught us so much. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful walk, and all the, I've got beautiful photos of the mushrooms and the trees, and they're all fluorescent, right? It was really, really little tiny mushrooms like this, and they're all blue. And anyway, it was fantastic, and there was a big turnout. Like, I was really surprised. There was maybe 25 people there, so it was really nice. Anyway.
One other thing, just to remind you, the next council meeting is not until August 6th. So just have a good long weekend. Okay, I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee minutes and agendas and the correspondence as presented on the agenda and addendum for July 15th meeting of council. Can I have a motion? Gail? Seconder? Somebody wake up. All in favor? I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby proceed to a closed meeting at 5:29 p.m. in order to address matters pertaining to, now we've added a couple items here, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. It's an HR matter, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality related to short-term rentals. Could I have a motion to move into closed? Ken and Mario? All in favor? Okay. So I have a motion that the council of the corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby rise from closed session and declare the regular meeting reconvened at 6:49 PM. Mover, please. Seconder. All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the council of the corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby extend the climate action internship position to the end of 2024. Ken, seconder, Greg. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the bylaw number 2024-073, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of meetings of council, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Terry and Gail. All in favor? Thank you. I don't really need to look. And I have a motion that the council of the corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn the regular meeting of council at 6:50 PM to meet again on Tuesday, August 6th, 2024, or at the call of the mayor. All in favor? Thank you. Thank